Hi, Lauren.
Oh, goodness. Hey, Aaron.
Hi, Mike Walker. We already have some folks from the public in the participants area.
Yeah.
All assemble for our meeting that will start at 5:30 p.m. Looking. So far, I don't have any stray GPAC members in the attendees part of the meeting, so that's good. Lauren and Michelle are here with us so far. I'm going to turn off video for a minute and get my notifications turned off. So during the webinar, for the recording purposes, random emails aren't just popping up onto the screen. I'll be back in a minute.
Am I too early?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
We're just using this time to go ahead and get set up, make sure everybody's good to go, and we don't have any
Gotcha.
technical glitches.
All right. I'll mute.
And there's our general plan consultant arriving a little early. We're going to get started at 5:30. And I've made it so panelists can share. So if you're doing any kind of presentation, that's all ready to go. But
Okay.
we're just
Great,
going to
yeah.
hang out until 5:30 and then we'll get started.
Okay, sounds
Good
good.
to
Thank
see
you
you,
so much,
Brendan.
Aaron. Good to see you too.
Hi there. And
Hi, Chuck.
hi, Aaron. I just wanted to just review with you when members of the GPAC, when it's time to talk about issues and things like that, that it's much like we've done before, where folks raise their hands, I guess, electronically. Is that the best way to go?
However, it really is up to you as the chair. You actually lead the largest group of volunteer members of a body that I work with on a regular basis. So if you prefer the GPAC to raise their hand using Zoom, let me know. And I noticed you were skilled at noticing when hands were up. I think so it's really up to you as the chair. And by the way, we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 members of the general public kind of in the waiting room, if you will, listening to us converse right now, because this is sort of like we're all sitting in the chamber together, ready to have a public meeting. So
That's fine. It would just be helpful for me. I think I'll try to notice when people have their hands up, but back to your point, when I'm watching 15 plus you and Patrick and Brendan and Rajiv and everybody else, I don't see it all.
I'll
So
keep an eye out too, if you'd like. I can be your backup. It is helpful to use their hand raise because it kind of helps queue up sort of the order in which people are expressing interest to speak. But I can definitely be your second set of eyes on both the GPAC discussions as well as facilitating the public comments.
well, on the public comment, absolutely yes. And it's one on what we did last time on the GPAC. You might say, boy, Chuck, here are 5 hands that were raised and here's sort of the order. And then I make quick notes.
I noticed that.
and then I can just call them in that order. And that was very helpful.
I'll do that again then. I'm glad we're talking about this ahead of time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then I'll just mute myself for a while.
We'll start promptly at 5:30, and I'm keeping an eye out for other GPAC members as they arrive.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Hello, Patrick. I can hear you tapping, so
There we are. Sorry.
yes, welcome. We're just hanging out in the quiet until closer to 5:30. Thanks for raising your hand while you were in the attendees area. It caught my attention. I was able to promote you to panelist. So, and
Great.
I'm keeping an eye out for other members of the GPAC that come in that way. So,
Sounds great. Thank you. Yeah, I
Feel free.
couldn't find the link that that staff had apparently sent, but that worked.
I'm glad you're here. So you can mute and
Thanks.
we'll be back soon.
Okay, can you all hear me? All right, good.
Yes. Yes, I can hear you, Bernie, and I can see you
Perfect.
as well. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you.
And I see Stephen there too. So we've got another GPAC member successfully in the meeting. We will start at 5:30
Great.
and which will be soon. Thanks, Bernie. Stephen.
Hi, can everyone hear me? I was having audio problem before.
Danielle, that would be you. Yes. I
Okay.
can hear you right now, but not see you, which is fine. But you're
Okay.
definitely audible.
Okay,
can
thank
hear
you. Thank you.
Excellent. Glad you're here. We're just about 1 minute out here. And thank you all for turning on your cameras, getting ready for the start of the meeting.
All right. It's 5:30. And as such, good evening to the August 31st City of Napa special meeting of the General Plan Advisory Committee. May I please have the call to order and the roll call?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair Shinneman. Vice Chair Narvaez. Are you muted?
Hold on.
There we
you hear me?
go. Yes.
Okay, I'm here.
All right. Committee members Ackerman,
Here.
Band,
Here.
Baraka,
Here.
Cuddy,
Here.
Dame,
Here.
Glazer,
Here.
Hurtado, Ricky going once, Commissioner McDonald, Commissioner McDonald, are you there?
She's unmuting herself right now.
Okay. I see a hand raised, and we're going to go ahead and work with that while she works on her unmuting issues. Committee member Priestley. No. Siegel.
Here.
Stewart.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
And Zand.
I see that Ricky Hurtado has just joined us.
I'm here.
Ricky, confirmed. Great. So it looks like we are noted absent as committee member Priestley and Zand.
Zand
Chair,
is
back
here
to you.
now.
Pardon?
Zand is here now.
All right. We'll check back and see if committee member Priestley checks in. Moving on to the summary of meeting procedures, item number 2. This meeting is a Zoom webinar feature. When prompted, the public will have an opportunity to speak as outlined on pages 3 and 4 of the posted agenda. Mr. Chair, back to you.
Great, thank you. The GPAC conducts all of its meetings in accordance with the Ralph M. Brown Act under California Government Code Sections 54950 et sec, and pursuant to the city's rules of order for GPAC meetings under Policy Resolution 10. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the GPAC will conduct this meeting as a teleconference in accordance with the governor's executive orders N-29-20 and N-63-20. In a moment, staff will explain how public comment will be accepted. Staff, are there any changes to the evening's agenda?
No changes to the agenda. I do want to kind of step through, take the opportunity to walk through and set kind of the expectations for tonight's meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to gather feedback from the General Plan Advisory Committee and to facilitate discussion on items related to land use. These discussions and considerations will be forwarded to the Planning Commission and City Council. The GPAC's role this evening, since they are not a decision-making body, they will not be quote unquote voting on any particular issue. Their charge this evening is to provide considerations that will later be reviewed by the City Council in their deliberations on items related to land use portion of the general plan update. On a note on public comment, the chair will ask for comment related to item 6A during that item. We ask that it if you have comments for that item, that you hold those comments until that time. We received a lot of comments, both through emails and letters, et cetera. And those are all have been included in the packet that was provided to the GPAC. Subsequent late communications that have come in since the packet has gone out have been also forwarded to the committee, so they have seen those comments. And all of those comments may be found on the project website, napa2040.com. I just want to be very clear too, that there was some concern that maybe this process wasn't being as transparent as possible because of the bifurcated way in which comments were included with the agenda or some on previous agendas. So I want to make it very clear to folks that may be listening or participating in tonight's meeting. If you send us a comment, it will be forwarded to the committee, either in advance of the meeting or included as part of the public record if we don't get a chance to send that to them prior to the start of the meeting. So just want to ease some minds out there. If folks thinking that their comments were not getting through, they are. If it comes in my inbox, it lands in the GPACs and their laps in some fashion. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Committee members, do you have any changes to the agenda? Great, and I know we have no comments on the consent we have nothing on the consent calendar. And we have received a huge amount of comments. So what I would love to have us do, if possible, we would like to have a staff report on some of the items, have the GPAC have an opportunity to discuss those, and then take public comment on those after we've had a chance to think about them and talk about them a little bit. GPAC, does that feel like a comfortable approach to you?
Yes.
Great. Also, Chair, sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure we kind of skipped over the public comment portion where we read to the audience what the process is when they do get that opportunity to speak. So what I will do at this time, if the chair would humor me, is read to the audience members what the process is. For each section of the agenda, when public comment is asked for, members of the public who wish to speak on the item should use Zoom's raise your hand button to indicate that they would like to speak. This appears as an on-screen button for those who have joined the teleconference online. For those members of the public who have joined the meeting by calling into the teleconference from their phone, they should push *9 to indicate that they wish to speak when an item of interest comes up. If there are members of the public who submitted email comments with 500 words or less to planning staff before the start of the meeting and requested that the comments be read at the meeting, staff will read those comments into the record as well. Staff has received several requests to read comments into the record. These have also been provided to the GPAC in advance and will be part of the digital record as well. So let's see, moving forward, Chair, back to you.
In that case, I would like to move, if we could, I put together a checklist that I hope we can use.
Chair, if I may, just briefly, just to clarify. So we do have item 4 on the agenda, public comment, which Mike Walker just discussed the process for that. I want to clarify if there were members of the public who had comments unrelated to related to the GPAC, but unrelated to other items that are already on the agenda, particularly administrative reports. Was this the time for those individuals to speak, or was that going to be all lumped together? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, if there's any folks out there that want to speak something to the general plan process or the update that's not related to items covered in 6A, this would be the time to speak. Aaron, do we have any hands raised?
Let me check. We have 2 hands raised. So, and they could be folks who have comment on 6A, or they could be folks that have general public comment. Chair Shinninan, would you like me to unmute the first one so we can find out?
Yes, please.
Okay, first one is someone labeled Sam and Rose, so I'm going to allow them to speak. So Sam and Rose, can you hear me and can you try speaking?
Yes, but that was an accident. I do not have a question.
Okay, no problem. I'll lower your hand for now, and that's not your
Yes.
last chance, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'll
Thank
put you back on mute. And then the next, we have two more hands, Chris Benz and Patty Kinder. So I'll go to Chris because she was next in the sequence of things. Chris, can you try speaking?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, my comment is a general comment. And it is that on August 4th, Michael Walker gave an update on the general plan to the Napa City Council. I don't know how many of you watched this, but the dedication and quality of your work was highly praised. Council members Alessio and Sedgley asked about inclusion of elements addressing climate change, environmental justice, and health in all policies. And Councilmember Luro specifically asked about proposed zoning in the Browns Valley area. I know that these are issues you'll be addressing tonight and in the future, and I wanted you to know that you have the support and interest of our City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
And then our next person is Patty Kinder, who may have general public comment. Patty, I've unmuted you. Can you try speaking? Patty, are you there? Last try with Patty. This could be a case where accidentally the raised hand button was hit, Chair Shinneman. So I'll go ahead and mute Patty. And of course, there'll be a chance to comment on 6A in a little bit. And then I have one more hand here. Looks like Amy Martinson. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Amy. Amy, you're unmuted.
Thank you. I actually specifically emailed in and communicated with Mr. Walker and asked if there would be general public comment, and I was told there would not be. So I don't have any prepared comments, but I do want to say the last City Council meeting, there were also quite a few people who spoke out concerned about the inclusion of autonomous vehicles in the draft plan, specifically under the environmental sustainability area, but also just generally. So I'll be sending in information about that. One of the things that I've been doing some research on is always in the context of these cars, it comes up that they will save on parking. I've done some research on that. So apparently the idea is that because you don't have to have room for a car door to open and close, you can pack cars in like sardines in parking lots. And this is how they're being presented. I did look it up, and what they said is one of the concerns with that is that people won't even park their cars. They will just allow their cars to cruise around, causing traffic congestion. So this could be a case of trying to solve one problem and creating a whole different problem. But specifically the inclusion in environmental sustainability, there's nothing environmental about these cars. There's nothing to guarantee that they will get cars off the road. And there's, in fact, the opposite, that it could lead to a lot of traffic congestion. So I'll be sending in more information about that to the GPAC. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martinson.
Chair Shinneman, we have one more possible general public comment, Catherine Lambert. Catherine, I've unmuted you so you can address the GPAC. Catherine, are you there?
There, thank you. I wrote an email to Michael Walker yesterday evening, and I'm hoping he can read it into the record. I was unaware that that was happening, so I just want to make sure that will happen tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Shinneman, I don't see any other raised hands at this time for general public comment.
Great. Thank you. So I'd like to move into a work through on the checklist that I shared with all of you. Is really formal votes, not formal votes. The
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
Just want to make, you were broken up a little bit. I don't know if it's on my end. But I just wanted to make sure that an opportunity.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little.
I am?
You seem clear now.
Yeah, it seems good now.
All right. Well, move the microphone over a little bit. Anyway, we've had 9 meetings, some by Zoom, some by in person. We've all participated in community forums, surveys, workshops. We've spoken to groups and all the rest. And of course, we've had a lot of public testimony, both in person and in writing. My hope is we can figure out some way tonight to gain consensus as we go through a number of these items, really making sure that we address the concerns that each of you might raise. Are there issues that you want to see addressed more closely? But thinking about, is there a way to use the way of thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down, thumbs up being yes, thumbs sideways being it's okay, but I'm okay with it. And thumbs down is, gosh, I really don't like that one. And part of what I would hope then is if we could figure out a way to have you help us address what those concerns are and see if there's a way to bring us all to in the same place, and we'll see. So the very first item that I have on the list is the Timber Hill area. And you've all received the document from the Browns Valley Action Group. I think, just speaking for myself, I think they've done some terrifically good work. And I think that it's worthy of consideration. So I'm throwing that out to the larger group and would appreciate your comments. Do I see any hands up, any comments? Bernie, please.
Thank you, Chair. I did also read the letters that came in from the public and some of the reports of that area, particularly to landslides and environmental concerns. And I like to recommend or see what everybody else would like to propose as land designation from what's currently on there to Greenbelt. I would feel comfortable designating that area Greenbelt. I don't know if I would like to see the group kind of get a census of that. I know we're not voting, but to move forward for city council and planning to see what the majority of GPAC feels is appropriate.
Thank you. So I think what is recommended in the Timber Hill, West Browns Valley area, a couple things is they suggest putting specific properties that are numbered on their report into a Greenbelt area. And I hope you have all that before you or you've seen it. I think they've provided an excellent definition of Greenbelt, and I saw also there was information from the Greenbelt Alliance. So they've recommended that their areas, what they call areas 1 through 5, along with 3A, be put into Greenbelt, and then very specifically some other parcels in a very low density area that they designate as area 6. I'm curious if others in the GPAC have comments or thoughts on that. Jennifer, please.
I agree with Council Member Narvaez. I thought that the report was very well done. I'm a resident in Browns Valley, so I am a little bit biased, but as a voice from that population, and in addition, looking at some of the survey results and the community's interest in preserving the areas surrounding, right on the outskirts of our neighborhoods as outdoor open space that's usable. I think it improves the quality of living in Napa. So I agree that it's something that I would give a thumbs up to.
Thank you. Do we have other comments? Ricky, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I think this report provided really in-depth information. The correspondence was very well taken. I would suggest that we preserve this area as well, the green belt, and make it a green belt Greenbelt area. I just don't believe that this will help our community goals that we've envisioned and our mission. It's really in a fault line. It takes away from the greenery, although we do need an array of housing developments and a mix of them. I don't think that this is the appropriate for this area. If I do understand that we have people that are, commuting to Napa that wish to live here, but I really don't believe that this will meet that criteria in supporting our blue collar workers and supporting our workforce in general. So that's my take on it. I would support in doing this a green belt. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from other members of the GPAC?
Mr. Chair.
Please.
Just one clarification. You said that the first item on the list was Timber Hill, and I have Napa Oaks as first. And I'm wondering, are we talking about both of these now, or are we just talking about Timber Hill?
I'm sorry, Mr. Siegel, I wasn't as clear. I thought I would like to flip to Timber Hill first.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And follow up with Napa Oaks.
In that case, I support the Greenbelt proposal as well.
Thank you. And just one comment to make sure that one of the important things in the Greenbelt designation as proposed is that it would allow one home on existing parcels of record and one home up to 1 unit per 20 acres if desired. I don't think I'm seeing any other hands going up. Yes, please.
Just want to clarify, because you mentioned on the map what was provided by the Browns Valley group, the area 1 through 6. Part of that is Napa County. So just wanted to make sure we were all aware of that our recommendations would be within the RUL. Just wanted to make a note of that.
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, you have 3 hands up from GPAC members. Committee member McDonald's had her hand up for quite a while. Also, a committee member Dame and committee member Ackerman.
Deborah, please.
You have to unmute though, Deborah.
You're good. Well, your microphone may not be working.
If the microphone issue doesn't get resolved, Deborah, you could call in through the phone number as an alternative, because we can't hear you, and I know you're trying to unmute, so that might be our best. Let me know once you get in there that way, and I'll promote you to panelist so you can be part of the conversation.
Great. Then Michelle, you were up next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would support the designation for Greenbelt. I think that the group's presentation at the Senior Center when we were having in-person meetings and all the information provided for our packet today was very thorough, well presented, and provided a lot of points in terms of the unstable hillside, the grasses, the open space, the fire, and if it didn't go to the Greenbelt recommendation, I was going to suggest no changes at all to the zoning, because I think anything more than what is currently allowed would be too much for that particular area based on the public presentation and the written information we received today. Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I also agree with my fellow committee members that this particular area should be deemed Greenbelt, with the proposal for one of those sections to be very low density. I noticed that the staff had proposed that this was to be very low density, so I still in being some of that potential use on one portion of the Timber Hill area, but the remaining portion is designated by the Browns Valley Group, I believe should stay Greenbelt as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other members who wish to speak on this, or would you all like to?
Can you hear me now?
There you are.
Oh gosh, sorry.
Don't you love technology?
Can I'm. It's probably user brain damage. Am I allowed to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay, I just wanted to add my vote, if you will, to the chorus of people. The report was very well done, and I certainly would endorse labeling this as Greenbelt.
Thank you. So looking at the rest of you, perhaps what maybe you could just do on screen is give a thumbs up if that's what makes sense to you.
Chair, if I can just ask a clarifying question of staff. I'm sorry to jump in last minute.
Please.
The chair had mentioned that the Greenbelt designation allows one primary dwelling unit per existing parcel, and added a maximum of 1 unit per 20 acres. And I didn't see that in the standards for density development intensity chart. And I just wanted to clarify that that's accurate, assuming that these parcels were later subdivided. Even if they're under the Greenbelt designation, could there be a higher density of development?
Give me a moment to pull up that. Let's see.
And so while staff is looking for that answer, the reason I ask this question is it looks like parcel 4 or from the Timber Hill letter, which is 67 acres, if it was subdivided at some point, could potentially have still up to 3 separate homes, even under the Greenbelt designation. I just want to clarify that's correct.
I believe that area. Sorry, I believe that area runs into the county.
I believe part of it does, yeah. Part of the parcel, not the whole parcel, though.
So those areas within the city that, as proposed under the definition given us by the Browns Valley Group, it would be up to 1 unit per 20 acres, which allows folks to have some modicum use of their property.
Correct.
I'll defer to Mike Walker.
Yeah, the 1 per 20 actually comes from our current resource area designation. The proposed Greenbelt designation is silent on the 1 per 20. It does talk about 1 housing unit per existing parcel being permitted. I think at this level, your charge would be, I think we're gaining a consensus around not having the very low density designation and going something that is more familiar to the Greenbelt or the existing resource area designation. I think that's coming through fairly clearly from the committee and of course the public. So we can include those considerations as we move this forward. As mentioned before, this is a continuing working draft, and all these considerations will be processed and forwarded to the Planning Commission and City Council, who will have the final say on how these designations are described and what designations apply to which properties. So I think it's all excellent points, and we can note that as we move forward.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that clarification. So with that clarification, committee, may I have a thumbs up if that's what you all agree? I think I'm seeing thank you. Then if we might please, why don't we jump over to Napa Oaks, which has obviously been a bone of contention as well. I happen to think the definition provided by the Greenbelt or by the Browns Valley Group is absolutely applicable to this area as well. So I'd love your comments on that too, please. Bernie, please.
Thank you, Chair. So regarding Napa Oaks, I mean, even beyond the general plan update, we've seen quite a bit of activity with community feedback. And I want to refer back to one of the surveys that we received when we first started the general plan update. And in that questionnaire about what do people want the city to promote in the next 20 years. Number one was promote natural resources and open space with 77%, very important, 17% important. So that was above everything else, even housing. And also remember Napa City Council having to reference the general plan process to find out what they want to do for that land as far as land designation. So I think it's very important that in this meeting that we talk about that land designation. I also received ample correspondence and phone calls from the public with their concerns of the impact in that neighborhood and the natural resources, the watershed, the water runoff. And I would also like to recommend that area to be designated Greenbelt. And I would like to see what the consensus is among the GPAC.
Thank you, Bernie. I think I see that Deborah and Lauren have their hands up. So Deborah, if you would, please, and then Lauren.
I just wanted to jump in and say that I agree that this should be Greenbelt. The arguments have been very persuasive all along that the public has brought to our attention. And I also want to say to the public that we've heard you and we've read absolutely every letter and we've heard you, and I support making this parcel Greenbelt.
Thank you. Lauren, please.
Yes, I mean, I know the history on this property, and it has already been before City Council previously. This would be the third time by the developer to try again to put this property through for residential development. And I agree also that this should remain permanently in Greenbelt. It also has the issue of earthquake fault area that's quite significant, similar to the other areas we're discussing this evening. And I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration, and something that I've learned that if the properties were developed in this area and there were to be another earthquake, you know, the recourse for that could be detrimental to the city potentially down the road. So something that is also to be considered for this. I think it's certainly something to, you know, just for me alone, that the fact that it's been here before City Council, and City Council twice has already turned this down based on recommendations from people living in the area, is enough for me to say that there shouldn't be a third time. So I vote for Greenbelt.
Thank you, Lauren. I saw earlier that Patrick had his hand up, and then Ted after that, please.
I'll just be brief. I wholeheartedly support all the comments by my colleagues thus far.
Thank you. Ted, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, excuse me, I understand that why these two land use designations are being presented to the GPAC as we look over the next 20 years to make recommendations to the city to come back and take a look at them. But I think through the last year and a half, almost 2-year process that GPAC has met, the vision that we see collectively for the next 20 years in the city of Napa just doesn't match the land use designations that are proposed. And so I also support the Greenbelt designation.
Thank you. Danielle, please.
I'll be brief. I just want to say that I support the opinions of my committee members, and I think the public has spoken loudly and clearly over the last few years on this subject. I think it'd be irresponsible on this particular parcel for us to designate it anything other than Greenbelt. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Howard, please.
Just one clarifying question again. Are there multiple parcels that constitute this property, or is it just the one parcel?
Staff, could I ask that of you, please?
I believe it's just one parcel. Let me look at the latest map I have available here just to make sure.
It's multiple parcels, not very many parcels. Mike may be able to surface the exact number, but it's a few parcels.
So 5 to 10 or less than 10, would you say?
Definitely less than 10, maybe around 5. I'm going from memory from a couple years ago. I apologize.
Because this is the same question that was just asked about Timber Hill about, and in this case, I think all that property's in the city, or at least the RUL. And if it's a 1 unit per parcel, it'd be good to know what the ceiling is even under Greenbelt designation.
Again, I think without having an exact answer right now as the number of parcels, I think again that marks a great consideration as we move forward. Again, to provide that commentary to the council as something to consider when they review this. Yeah, the map I have, it doesn't really show anything clearly. So I would say that that's another great point to be made as we move it along. We can certainly provide additional information to the Planning Commission and Council as we move forward.
Great, thank you. So, looking around, I'm trying to spot if anybody has a hand up. Ricky, please.
Yeah, just like what a lot of my colleagues said. Thank you, Chair. Just, I mean, this has come time and time again. And I just think, last time defeated by the city council. And I just think, it's time that we designate this area as the green belt. We all remember the packed City Hall. If you were there, whether virtually or at City Hall, I think the people have spoken, and we want to make sure that we support them and we honor them.
Thank you. Do I see any other hands being raised? Patrick, please.
Yeah, I just had a clarifying question that, to my knowledge, the city does not have a hillside or ridgeline protection ordinance of any kind. And so even with designation as greenbelt, one of my concerns would be large homes located high on ridge lines that do significantly impact the view of the hillsides. And so if that does not yet exist, I mean, obviously there's a whole process for development to go through, but what, if any, options might we have to provide direction to Planning Commission and Council regarding making sure that, particularly within the Greenbelt designations, that any development that does occur is done so to minimize or eliminate any impacts on residents' ability to see the hills?
Thank you. I think I would be a count.
I just wanted to point of clarification. The city does have a hillside overlay that applies to properties with significant topography. So that's already covered. There's a section in the municipal code that addresses how development can occur and what additional restrictions are with regards to hillside development.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other folks who want to comment on the Napa Oaks, please? Seeing none, then so then the recommendation then is that that property would be designated Greenbelt as defined by the excellent work again done by the Browns Valley Group. May I have thumbs up if that's what everybody agrees with? I see one, if not two, thumbs up by everybody. So thank you all. I think that's excellent. I know that there were, and Mike, I'd love to have your help on this, but I know that we had a whole lot of folks who came this evening or are out there via Zoom who were very interested in speaking to us about Napa Oaks and Timber Hill. I hope that we've addressed the concerns that you've raised to us. So unless there's something that is of great importance to you to tell us, then I hope we've satisfied you. Do we have any public comment to that effect?
Chair Shinneman, are you proposing to open up public comment on these two sites?
Yes, if folks want to address us, but congratulations by email would be far preferable, just given our time constraints this evening.
So far, I appear to have, I think, two hands requesting to make public comment. So I can time them for 3 minutes each at the chair's pleasure, and then we can see if we have any more hands after we get through the two. So the first one is Amy Martinson. And Amy, I have almost successfully unmuted you. Are you there?
Yes, hi.
Great.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Amy Martinson. I am speaking on behalf of the Napa County Progressive Alliance, and obviously my statement's going to be different than what I had originally planned. So I just want to thank you for doing your job and listening to the city residents by supporting the Napa Oaks and Timber Hill Greenbelt designations. Thank you for ensuring that the guiding principles are actually guiding the rest of the plan and that there's internal consistency within the plan. Given the fact that we have been and are witnessing the effects of a climate emergency, we cannot afford to lose any more open space to development. New development should be reserved to already developed areas within the city and infill lots, and should be inclusionary, mirroring the economic makeup of our residents. All of the candidates for mayor and city council who are backed by the political establishment have been taking campaign contributions from developers, and one candidate for city council works for private developers. The new mayor and council members will determine the final draft of the 2040 general plan. However, by this committee taking a unanimous stand of support for these areas' Greenbelt designation, it will help buffer against the unforeseeable outcome of this November's election. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Martinson.
And now we will go to a second hand I had was Carol Barge. It looks like the third hand is Harold Kelly. So Carol, I've just unmuted you, I think. Can you confirm? Let's try that again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, great.
Okay. I just wanted to thank you, GPAC, very much. And I just wanted to clarify on the parcels. I'm looking at the environmental draft environmental impact report from the last iteration from the developer, and it is 78 acres on the hillside, which is the resource area part, and then the remaining 2.6 acre northeastern corner of the site is designated for single family residential at densities of 0 to 3 residential units per acre, and it's RS10, single family residential, minimum lot size 10,000 square feet. There is one house on that residential side, which is Caswell, and there's room from this lot size for 6 more homes, just to clarify that. That's all I have.
Thank you.
And I'm going to go to Harold now. Harold, I believe I have unmuted you, but I would like you to try to speak and we'll see. Harold, are you there? Great, we can hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to thank Chuck Shinneman, the chairman, and the rest of the staff, the committee, on their recommendations. But I want to advise the public that it has to be fully aware if it's got a position on this, that this will go to the planning commission and then to the city council. And for those that have learned over the years, you have to follow it every inch of the way. So thank you, and I hope everybody that's still following these things do. Thank you.
Harold, thank you, and it was wonderful to hear your voice.
Okay, next up we have another hand, Valerie Wolf. I'm going to push the unallow to talk button. Valerie, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Great.
Great, thank you. Valerie Wolf, 389 Franklin Street. I want to thank you for tonight's vote. But I'd also just like to read what I had written for this evening. As you all well know, we're currently living in the scope of a chaotic reality that encompasses habitat losses of millions of trees, watershed health, economic decline, and a myriad of other unpleasant realities. Talk of any development that displaces precious, intact landscapes, destruction of any carbon sequestering trees and grasslands, and habitat for life other than humans is a subscription into the furthering of our own loss of the opportunity to move forward in the direction of restoration from our current destruction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna mute Valerie, and then looks like, Mr. Chair, we have maybe one more hand. I got to double check here. Jess Raphael, and I'm just scrolling down to make sure. Looks like Jess Raphael is our next speaker. Jess, I have unmuted you, I believe. If you could try speaking, that would be great.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you, committee. Could I just confirm that the Planning Commission is going to meet on this subject on September 17th?
Yes, the agenda for that meeting will be coming out the week prior. And based on our current schedule, we are tentatively scheduled to go before City Council on October 20th.
And I'm sorry I logged on late. What was the recommendation about the Morningside property?
Greenbelt.
Thank you so much.
Great. Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to double check to see if we have any more hands wishing to make public comment. Looks like there's two more. I'm just scrolling down. So we have Gary Orton and Mark Harold. So I'm going to go with Gary Orton next. Gary, I think I've unmuted you. Can you try speaking?
Can you hear me?
Yes, great.
Does this have to do with 6A in general? I'm not going to speak as to the two items you just covered, but I do have something to say, something about 6A in your land use plan.
Chair Shinneman.
Please.
Thank you. Chair Shinneman and members of the committee, my name is Gary Orton. I'm on the steering committee of the Napa Valley Progressive Alliance. First, thanks to each of you for your devotion to this review process. Based on my experience as both an elected and appointed office holder, I can attest that you have an awesome responsibility to hear the views of the community, ask questions of staff, and give your frank opinions to the ultimate decision makers. More importantly, these are moral obligations you owe your neighbors, including those with the least influence, those who have been denied the right to vote, the over 2,000 people who live in the 7 unincorporated areas that are completely or substantially surrounded by the city. One called West Pueblo Linda Vista has 1,400 residents and 538 dwellings, and another, Imola Parish, has 550 residents and 212 dwellings. Both are in census areas of lower than average median household incomes. I and other members of the Progressive Alliance have canvassed the largest island. I don't have time tonight to tell you how the city and county have ignored the needs of these residents, adults and children. The 2011 state legislature began to address this statewide problem of underserved island communities when it mandated for inclusion.
Because it was getting low.
Oh, it was? Oh, no, you're 72%.
Now I'm okay, but
can you hear me?
Down in the
Yes.
40s, so.
Someone else is audible, though. I'm not sure who it is.
I hope that's not taking out of my time.
Harold Kelly.
There, I got it. Sorry, Gary. Please continue.
Okay. I was saying that in the 2011, the state legislature began to address the statewide problem of underserved island communities when it mandated for inclusion in the land use element, a study of the needs and deficiencies of low-income unincorporated island areas with at least 10 dwellings. The statute expressly requires the city to use data to determine the income of each unincorporated island. It is no excuse that U.S. Census data is inadequate to measure income in Napa's smallest island communities. Cities with fewer resources than Napa have recognized their obligation and used alternative methods to determine the median household income of their unincorporated areas having as few as 65 dwellings. I made my first request for the city's income data on the 7 islands on August 6th. Its vague response led me to a wild goose chase for data, and on August 20, I made it clear I wanted the city's estimated annual median household income for each island together with its supporting data and methodology, or an acknowledgement that none exists. To date, I have received neither income estimate nor data nor acknowledgement that it has none. Furthermore, I specifically addressed both requests for data to this committee and Mr. Walker, expressly requesting it be forwarded to each member. I have not received any acknowledgement that it was sent to you. My 2 requests included explanations of the mandate, and they have not been attached to any of the documents related to tonight's agenda relating to your review of the general plan land use element. My plea tonight is for you, this committee, to ask staff, 1, how does the city intend to comply with the state mandate to identify low-income unincorporated islands? And 2, when will this committee receive the analysis of the needs and deficiencies of the islands that is mandated to be included in the land use element? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Orton. I think we'll have to defer that to staff. We certainly won't have it this evening.
You will not?
We will not have that information clearly this evening.
Yeah.
I do believe, though, that Mr. Orton's public comments did get passed on to the GPAC.
Absolutely. We have all of those.
We did
Yes.
receive those.
I'm sorry.
Chair Shinneman, I'm going to go ahead and unmute the next speaker, Mark Harold.
And if, Ms. Morris, if you would, past speakers continue to show up on my screen.
Yes, there's a setting you can each do. I've done it on my computer, so I don't see them anymore. There's a way of changing it so for your view, you only see speakers who have their video turned on. And that will actually disappear sort of ghost speakers who are no longer here to speak to you, or they might be in the audience. So it's a video setting that once you set it for your Zoom, all your future Zooms will hide those speakers from your view.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sorry about that. I should have had another request from another committee member as well. So Mark, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear
Great.
me?
Excellent.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
So I'm Mark Howard. I live on 24 Modoc Court right off of Morningside. I've lived in the county since 1980. I've lived at this address for about 30 years. And I might be a bit naive to this process because I'm just sitting in this for the first time, but it seems like we fight this battle every 4 or 5 years or whatever. And I'm just wondering what is the driving force for these lands that keep coming up, and considering our, debate. They then go to the city council, get voted, we get sued over it. We have to win is it just the developers' pressure of money coming into the county?
I'm afraid I'll have to defer to staff on that.
Does that conclude your public comment, sir?
Well, I would like it to be, and the second part of that is Greenbelt as strict as we can make it? I mean, is there a tighter a tighter zoning that would say no building on these properties?
You still have a little less than 2 minutes if you want to make any further public comment before we go back to the GPAC.
Yeah, I would just maybe like an answer on that. If it's easy to answer, I don't know if it is or not.
We don't really do Q&A with public comment. You
Oh,
get your
okay.
comments
All right,
out, and then the
gotcha.
GPAC will go from there.
Okay, well, that's just my statement. I think, we waste a lot of time fighting this battle over and over again. If we could designate the land as, strictly like, don't build on it, use it for a resource area, whatever the right thing is, then we can move on to more important things, Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I don't see any more hands for public comment on these two land use areas. So that seems to be all for that.
Thank you. Then moving forward using the checklist that I had sent you, Stanley Ranch, I think, was fairly straightforward, although I believe that Ronald made a comment on that earlier in her comments on comments in relation to the hospitality area. I guess not. I don't see. Deborah, did you want to make any further comments about the hospitality area down at the Stanley Ranch?
No, Chair Shinneman, I think they've been addressed.
Great. All right. Thank you. And then any other comments by any members of the GPAC in relation to Stanley Ranch? Mr. Zan, please.
I just want to say that I've spent some time recently getting to know the gentleman running the project, and they have relocated and moved a number of their high ranking executives to Napa, and they're really going out of their way to ingrain themselves into our community. You would think I'd be against it given we have the resort around the corner, but they're good people, and I think they're going to bring good a good product and good housing opportunities to Napa. So I'm not one to say you're not welcome. So I you know, it might hurt me in the end, but I think they're good people, and I think it's going to be a plus for the city and the county.
Thank you. I think the concern that Deborah had expressed at one point was to ensure that the approved area for the approved resort down there was the limit as shown on the general plan map. Is that correct, Deborah?
That is correct. Thank you, Chuck.
Great. All right. Any other comments on Stanley Ranch? Just looking around. Thank you. Then if we could move to one that might be a little more properties. I'm going to read something and then have you all respond and give us a lot of feedback. I know that we've had a terrific amount of input we received over the weekend and today in relation to those two parcels. So I'd like to have some conversation amongst ourselves first and then have some public comment. These areas have been in the RUL for 40 years and designated for housing. And as I said, I read and I assume all GPAC members have read the comments in today's packet from the neighbors. They've rightfully made a comment that there are many issues that would have to be addressed in a full EIR: traffic, earthquake fault, water, view corridors, protection of drainages, and all the above. But I think if the council ultimately chooses to consider such a development, what are the aspects that should be included in that development? I think that's what our charge is, to give them that advice, not to say whether it should or should not be developed, but if it is developed, what should be the components of that. The GPAC has discussed this area in the past in prior meetings, and it appears there was rough consensus or general consensus about a number of issues. One was that it should be a complete neighborhood with a mix of housing types, parkland, neighborhood serving small businesses, small groceries, coffee shops, etc. That there should be a focus on integrated pedestrian and bicycle access, along with internal walking paths and landscaped areas. A city park might be incorporated into the area, most likely adjacent to a Snow School, depending on how that works, but there should be easy access to the park and to Snow School from all directions. A lot of interest was expressed on Foster Road. Frontage should incorporate some kind of either a green belt or parkway that would make a very wide pedestrian bike path to serve both the existing neighborhood as well as proposed neighborhoods. A similar situation might occur further down on Golden Gate Drive. That the residential strip along Foster Road needs to be somewhat wider to truly echo what's happening on the west side of Foster. And then there certainly needs to be strong addressing of the traffic situation. For those who live out that way and who've expressed strong concerns about how poorly some of the intersections work, that's clearly an issue that needs to be addressed. So with that as a preamble, I know that probably each and every one of you have thoughts and opinions about this, and I'm opening that up for your thoughts. So Ms. Morris, I think I would love to have your help on that, trying to look around quickly.
Yes, Chair Shinneman, I don't see any raised hands using the Zoom button. Nope, now there's two. See, they're quick. Deborah and then Bernie so far.
Please, Deborah.
Well, I live off of Foster Road, so I have, you know, my comments in the past have said things like, well, maybe I should recuse myself. But I have to agree with my neighbors that I would not like to see this property developed because it is the gateway to the city, and also it's beautiful. I walk there every day, and also the earthquake issues. You know, the Snow Elementary School had to be relocated because of the earthquake issues near the fall. And so so I would be, as a neighbor, speaking as a neighbor, against it. But also I find that the range of possibilities is so broad of what we're being asked to consider that you leave the door open for sort of anything to happen. I don't think that we as a committee can mandate the kinds of walking trails and parks and so forth that the definition that we'd like to see, but the definition doesn't mandate. So I'm concerned that even if we don't go with a green belt or something like that, that it's just too broad to allow for anybody. We don't have the power to issue those kinds of rules that you've just described, Chuck. So for that reason, I have to be opposed to it.
Thank you. And then Bernie, you're up next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I did bring up before in meetings that a complete neighborhood will be important to avoid, to avoid commuting across neighborhoods from one side of town to the other. So having a mixed use of, primary necessities for the neighborhood, grocery store, pharmacies, things like that will be important. So I know there were some concerns about having some kind of commercial use on there. It would be, in my opinion, it would be light commercial use just to be able to have a complete neighborhood along with the park. I'm also concerned about, the allocation of RHNA credits that Napa will have to comply with in the near future, and that gets Lela property provides a unique opportunity for us to maximize housing. I know that there are some sensitive areas closer to Foster Road. They winden the road and creating more density towards the freeway than towards Foster Road would accommodate that existing neighborhood. I also would like to recommend that we allow space for future connection to 29 because as that community grows and traffic grows, we can avoid some of that traffic on Foster and Golden Gate Drive by hopefully connecting 29 in the future at some point. So just want to make sure we have that recommendation on the record. Because we're not going to build on the other sites, like Napa Oaks and Timber Hill, we want to make sure that we take opportunities where we can to build housing. We don't have a lot of land left. I know there's still infill, but this is a very unique place. So I would be in favor of having residential property here. Also, I mean, there's some communications about having ample access for roads and emergency access. So that's something that we can add. We can't control all the details. City Council will do that. But although we can't mandate it, we can definitely recommend, because I would see City Council referring back to the work that we're doing with public input. So I want to make sure that, that's something I support, and we can connect that neighborhood to the school other than Foster Road. So Foster Road, I don't think would just be the only road on the west side of Golden Gate. There'll be existing roads that'll connect to Golden Gate, south to Napa, north to Napa to alleviate the traffic on Foster Road as a single road. So that's what I have for now. May have some more comments later. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I had Howard and then John after that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of things. I have a procedural question for staff that relates to CEQA that could apply to this property as well as others. If a designation is made for a particular property such as this, and it is addressed in the EIR, probably at a programmatic level, does that preclude the need for project-specific CEQA if a development proposal comes forward?
So the intent of our goal broadly on the general plan is to have a robust EIR that examines all of these things, so it does make it easier for development to happen on certain properties. Now, this property has a lot of complexities, obviously, with hillside and faults and waterways and all sorts of different things, as outlined somewhat in your report. This site could be a candidate for future study beyond the general plan process, such as a specific plan area or a master plan process, to really dive in a little bit deeper. I think because of the complexities, it might be a little presumptuous to assume that we would have a full-blown development-ready EIR analysis on this property from the general plan program level. Aaron, did I miss anything on that?
I'm just going to answer Howard's question a little more directly, although I think the background was helpful. I think that we would expect that development of the Gazleta property and nearby properties would involve additional site-specific environmental review that would likely tier off of the general plan EIR, which will deal with sort of the big impacts, and then we'll look at the actual project impacts as part of a next round of environmental review. So there will be a chance to study these things in detail, because it will affect how that site develops in the future. The environmental factors will be.
Thank you. And the reason I'm asking that is because this is a difficult balancing act. Yes, you know, Bernie makes some good points about needs for housing and limited availability of land, but a lot of the folks who live in that area have made a lot of good points about the environmental sensitivity, earthquakes, et cetera. And even though I like the idea of taking some of the pressure off with an additional access point to Highway 29. I hate to tell you, Bernie, that's not going to happen in this planning horizon, if ever. So it's a nice thought, but I wouldn't put a lot of stock in that relieving the pressure that might come if this area were to be developed. So that's why I'm sort of on the fence, and I was curious how the CEQA process would work going forward.
Chair, I just wanted to mention that a lot of the work that we're going to do, you know, we'll transfer to the next GPAC process. So a lot of our goals, our priorities, the vision may not come to fruition in the next 20 years. But it will, the next GPAC will look at what we tried to do and find out what worked and what didn't. And they will take that into consideration. So what we envision now will help the process in the future as well. Just something to note.
Thank you. John, did you have a comment?
I do have a couple comments. Thank you, Chair. And I'm going to be on the side of threading the needle or walking the fence, as Howard did, between Bernie's perspective and Deborah's. This is a special piece of property. I live near it. I walk Foster Road regularly, and I think everybody who lives in that area treasures the natural beauty, the livestock that are there, the Horsemen's Club activities, which I would hope could last for many, many more years. However, I also think about the horizon that maybe not as far off as I once thought it would be, of numerous people moving to Napa and the tremendous need for housing. And I'm just not clear that infill can accommodate what we're going to need. And we're not talking about huge, tall buildings yet in Napa. And that might be a trade-off for me if we were to make a commitment to going up. But I think there's a commitment to going up, but perhaps not high enough to accommodate the kind of growth that we're liable to see within the next 20 years. I would suggest that we can master plan, someone can master plan the property. I totally understand and appreciate it's not GPAC's role, but that a substantial green belt bordering Foster Road, a carefully thought out feathering towards Golden Gate Drive could actually become acceptable. It's not clear to me yet. I think I would fall on the side of, of saying, if there's a hopper we could put this in that would require master planning, then I would say let's put it there. If it's a simple open and shut case of let's approve the zoning that's been suggested within the context of the general plan land use policies, then I think it is more problematic. I hope people are understanding the distinction that I'm making. I think it could be done. I think it could be made acceptable, but I would hate to see it given a green light status without the thoughtful kind of planning that would be needed to make it compatible with our environmental concerns and compatible with the neighborhood.
Thank you. Do we have comments by other members of the GPAC?
Chair Shinneman, it looks like Committee Member Ban would like to speak.
Please.
Thank you. I feel a little ill-equipped to follow John's very well thought out comments. I agree with everything that he said. I definitely shared Deborah's concerns about both preserving the kind of rural nature of Foster Road for people who already live there, and also for residents who want to find a space to escape, and the challenges of from the Golden Gate or Highway 29 perspective, further pushing out the kind of gateway of Napa and having a large housing development be the first thing that people see. That's already behind a pretty large sound barrier. The first thing people see on the east side of the highway as you get a little closer into town, in addition to the storage facilities on the west side of the highway. I think that John is absolutely correct, though, that there is a way to thread the needle, and I think specifically because of all of the very complicated site-specific conditions out there with earthquake fault lines and hydrology and hillsides, and the need to go through a pretty, I think, extensive environmental review process, that will significantly knock down on the high end of any potential development density. I do certainly feel a little bit uneasy about the residential mixed use designation up to 40 units per acre. I think that's obviously a pretty big range. I don't think it's reasonable for that site to see even 30 units per acre with a FAR of 1. So I think that number is going to naturally be lower. So I feel a little bit less concerned. I also want to recognize Bernie's comments that we are in a housing crunch, and that's going to be the way that we're going to be for a while. We can address a lot of it through infill, but we might have to have some flexibility. And this seems like one of the few locations in town that's worth exploring. I think my personal red line is this is currently not within the city limits. And as a couple of comments, public comments were made earlier tonight, we have a lot of unincorporated islands in the city that frankly have been underserved and under-resourced for a long time. And so I kind of bringing this back out to the citywide level, I would feel a little bit remiss if we gave the green light, so to speak, to development of the Gazleta Horsemen's properties and continued to ignore the existing developments in the unincorporated islands around the city, recognizing those are two separate processes and two separate conversations, but I think there's a way to bring those together as well. So I'll stop my comments there.
Thank you. I'm looking, and do we have comments from other members of the Howard, please? You're muted, Howard. There you go.
Just one quick question for staff again. Is there such a designation, or could there be something that resembles a study area, or, as somebody among the commenters just suggested, perhaps John, sort of hold it in abeyance, so to speak, for future development, or at least future evaluation of possible development? Instead of relying on the current designations that are in play.
Well, I think to some extent we need to be able to provide some direction, because that's going to guide a lot of the, the infrastructure studies and stuff that we do once we get the land use plan moved off center. A lot of the background work that goes into the heavy lift on implementing a land use plan is taking a look at infrastructure needs, traffic, and the like. And so those analyses can happen. I think we'd be remiss to kick that can down the road. I think what you can do, again, at this level, is to continue to create or to raise these considerations. And I think, understand that maybe further study is needed, beyond because right now the pre-zoning determination on this does allow for some development. It's pre-designated with some multifamily and some, I think, industrial. It's outlined in your report. Corporate park and some single family already exist in the general plan for this property. So I think it's important to continue that and provide that direction so we can do that much needed work on the infrastructure side. But again, if there's a desire to continue more specific refinement of that, certainly a specific plan overlay or something in the general plan policies that would direct us to do that.
Thank you. Bernie, you had a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to remind the committee about a couple reports. The most recent housing element, housing report to City Council showed us that in Napa County, we were about 2,000 units short of affordable housing for affordable rents. And City of Napa being the largest city in the county, I think we have a lot of responsibility to really try and meet that housing. It's not crunch, it's a housing crisis. Also in the report that we received earlier in the planning process, the economic, demographic, and real estate profile shows us that in the city of Napa, our workers that live in, it's only 37.8% of the workers that live in Napa. So the majority of our workers in Napa live outside the city of Napa. So we haven't done enough to address housing. And this property creates a very unique opportunity. So I asked the general plan committee to be bold, because as it goes to planning and city council, they will bring it down. They will add some restrictions. I don't think that we should do it. I think that we should push with housing. There are things that we can address as far as environmental concerns and the existing neighborhoods. But just be mindful of those reports, that data that drives us as where we should be heading and the issues that we're facing, and this unique opportunity to address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. Do I see any other hands? Ricky, please.
Yeah, I mean, great dialogue, I think, so far. But I would have to agree with Bernie just on being bold, right? The buck doesn't stop with us. So I think we do need to take some of those bold actions. And looking at just the city of Napa and just in general, the county of Napa and our valley, I mean, we're so restricted with housing. So I do agree that this will help out the workforce and our community members to create community. And we have so many families leaving because it is so expensive. So not saying this should be 100% affordable housing, but there needs to be housing, a different mixed housing for our workforce. So just want to mention that, and points all very well taken. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ricky.
Chair Shinneman, Committee Member Cuddy has his hand raised.
Please do.
Yeah, I want to just say that the conversation is great. I think the housing and having some kind of development, some community there could be a wonderful thing if it's done in an appropriate way. And I think we have to let, the opportunity happen and be part of that process. And then when it goes into the planning and the council and the planning commission, be there and be a voice to support the project, but in a way that's positive for the community.
Thank you. I think, Deborah, do I see your hand being waved? Okay, thank you. I wonder if they might forward is some desire for housing. I think I hear a lot of concern about all the points made about environmental sensitivity, the entry to our town, to the need to look more closely at the density there, and what may be ascribed, as Howard Siegel outlined, that mixed use of up to 40 units to the acre is probably far and away too much density there, but either we use the land for housing and use it thoughtfully and well, or we don't use it. I can see how, I know Eve Kahn, a local realtor, had made comments about the property, how the need to be very concerned about the hillsides to the south, to be sensitive to those, to see how parkland, et cetera, is all put into the property. So that those are all important factors going into this. Staff, does that give you any direction at all?
Yeah, I think, again, the conversation has been robust, and I think provides some good direction as we move forward. I think to me, what I'm getting is there's definite potential for residential down here, thoughtful and respecting the environment as much as we can with the restrictions, the encumbrances on the property. So I do think that provides good direction or good considerations from your point at this level to carry on to Planning Commission and Council.
Thank you.
If I may ask just one last question, I think of the whole GPAC. So the current designation includes a segment along Foster of Corporate Park. I didn't hear anybody advocating to keep something along those lines, that really residential is where we want to go. And I just wanted to confirm that that's the direction that everybody's hearing.
Am I seeing sort of a thumbs up for that? I think I'm seeing that, yes. And I think I'm certainly one who is not a big fan of the sound wall across the way. I don't think it creates a very handsome entrance to Napa. And I think, again, Eve Kahn in the email suggested very good looking earthen berms and all the rest that are highly landscaped down on Golden Gate Drive is a far better entrance to Napa than sound walls.
Chair, just a quick comment. I think if we do need to build this, if they end up building a sound wall, we can plant trees in front of it to give it a better view. So just a quick
thank you
note there.
Mr. John, please.
I would suggest then, based on what I just heard Mike Walker say, that we don't try for any kind of consensus on this. I think what I'm feeling is we have a lot of conflicting thoughts about it, that we don't try to send a recommendation on Gisletta forward to the Planning Commission other than the discussion that we've had. And the very strong recommendation that if consideration is given to this property, that careful EIR work and planning work needs to be done. And I also wanted to say, I don't think the property ever had commercial set for Foster Road. It was Golden Gate. And I just wanted to clarify that. So
my apologies, you're right.
My recommendation would be that we don't try to send a recommendation on this, that we send our concerns and a strong recommendation that if they go forward, that very thoughtful, careful planning would need to happen. Is that a legitimate recommendation, Mike?
Yes, I believe so.
Sure.
Thank you. Then wait.
Oh, sorry.
I had Lauren had wanted to speak, and I believe Tony Zand had his hand up at one point.
And Deborah's hand is also raised via Zoom.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been debating raising my hand or not. I agree with what's been said. I do agree we need to have that thoughtful look at this particular property. My other more general thing is, housing, I would still always have asked to what we truly believe will be our housing requirements and needs by 2040, if with any kind of estimation that's factual and true, capable, because we certainly right now in the business sector are in serious shape, serious issues, and that may or may not affect our housing issues and needs going forward, especially as a lot of those workers and some of those jobs may or may not be coming back. We have no way of really knowing that, obviously, but currently the prediction, at least for example, for the wine industry, is that the wine industry will not be coming back in any robust form to its pre-COVID levels till 2024 and beyond. And we may see a lot of reduced need for housing going forward as a result. So I'm just curious on that, how that will impact us. And I know that's a much shorter term than 20 years, but what happens in the next 4 or 5 will really set some interesting changes going forward for some of the things we're talking about today. So that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony, please.
There we go. Well, I was also going to talk about housing, and we've had this conversation, I think, many times, and I don't think it gets old because it's one of those issues that will never really probably be solved in my lifetime or my kids' lifetimes. And I hate to say that, and that's just everything we've seen. I feel like that is the truth. There's been some promise, though. I think Aaron and the planning department have gotten a number of applications for more apartments and affordable housing in South Napa. And I go back to when we started this process before COVID, and we had talked about a need for flexibility so businesses can adjust as things change. And then all of a sudden we got this massive slap in the face, and we're all dealing with the mother of all needs of flexibility, or just monkey wrenching all of our plans. So I think no matter what happens, we're always going to have groups of people that don't want housing in their area, and we're going to want groups of people that want housing in our area. At the end of the day, Napa only has so much space. And as a community, we have to decide if we want to make it more affordable to live here. There's never a good spot for housing. People don't want it on their block. That's just the reality of it. And it's unfortunate, but it's part of the reality we all face. And as a group, I think we've done an interesting and good job of raising these issues, whether it's threading the needle, trying to find compromise positions. And at the end of the day, Chuck, you did a great job, I thought, with your checklist, because we're just reporting recommendations as a committee. We're not paid the big bucks to make these decisions, but we are certainly, and I appreciate sitting here having these discussions and open to the public and being transparent, because this just stinks. This isn't an easy topic. I mean, people don't like traffic, but people don't want affordable housing in their neighborhood. It's like, well, all of these things form a relationship. I am all for more trails. I am all for more open spaces, but I'm also all for more affordable housing, and I'm all for less traffic and all the things that go into this. And it's just been a very humbling experience working with you guys on this, because I don't have all the answers, and no offense, I don't think any of us have all the answers, but all we can do is give our experiences and our thoughts. And I just think that we're getting to that point where we're almost done now, and city council certainly has a lot on their plate, but I hope that our experience can at least help guide them.
Thank you. Deborah, you had a comment?
Well, just briefly, I wanted to congratulate or reinforce the way John phrased our consensus, if you will, that, I mean, I am all for housing and affordable housing, and don't misunderstand me there. And yes, it sounds NIMBY-ish, but this particular property is complex in its needs, and in the needs of and where it's situated, and all the environmental concerns. And so I support the notion of no recommendation, which is, I think, what we're saying, before that there's quite a bit more study that needs to be done before we can say what we think we should do with this property.
Thank you. Bernie, you had a comment?
Yeah, you know, I respect Deborah's comments, but I'm on the other side of the issue. I think that the data, the further study will be done during the planning process with Planning Commission, City Council, once this goes forward. And this could happen after the recovery, where we have more workers in the valley and we need housing. I mean, this is not going to happen overnight. This could happen in 2025, 2026. We don't necessarily know. This is a large piece of land, and this process to build takes a long time. So, you know, we have to kind of think about when this actually starts getting built and where we are in the economic recovery. I think that we need to, my opinion, send a clear recommendation of where the GPAC stands as far as the proposed land use designation to Planning and City Council, have them decide. I don't think that no recommendation, I don't feel well with that moving forward. I think that I would like to show a thumbs up approach so City Council knows. If we're split, if we're more no, I think they should know that instead of a no recommendation.
Howard, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, again, procedural question. If we make what was being referred to as no recommendation, aren't we in fact recommending that the current designations remain intact?
I wouldn't see it that way. And again, the importance of our discussion tonight is much less on the finality of something versus what are you guys, you know, what's the committee struggling with, if there are concerns about what's proposed on the draft land use plan, or what there's great support of. And I think you've articulated very well the struggles that you're having for those who are less inclined to see this property develop. I think those are being articulated in a way that provides the council and the planning commission the information that they need to build upon and to consider when they make their decisions on what the draft land use plan or the preferred plan looks like. So again, I don't want to get tied up of, you know, we're at 8 to 7, yay or nay, more so than what information are we drawing out of you as a committee on either side of the issue that really helps the council and the planning commission make a better final recommendation on a preferred land use plan. So I think that all the commentary is helpful. And I think for those that are saying no recommendation, I think the things that they've said to articulate that position are what's more important than the final answer, if you will.
Now, one thing, Patrick, you had suggested removing the corporate park designation, which I thought got quite a few thumbs up.
Well, that has already been done. That's the current general plan use. And so that's been removed. And instead there's a mix of residential mixed use and medium density.
Okay, so that's off the table.
Yeah, and I just wanted to confirm, because what I didn't want to do was say no changes to the current designation, which is what we did effectively for some of the Napa Oaks, Timber Hill sites.
Right.
So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
I think that what we have is a consensus of no consensus. I think we have advice to the Planning Commission and Council. I don't know that a thumbs up on the land use that's before us would really get us very far, specifically. And I rather agree with the outline that John Glazer had put forward, and I think that Patrick Band had echoed. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up on that. Is that right? All right. And I know we've got a lot to do tonight. It's already 7 o'clock. And on that point, I think that we said that we would allow some, and Mike and Aaron, your help on this would be very welcome, some public comment on this. I know we've had a lot of folks sitting out there on this. So I think it's important we have some public comment. It would be nice if number one, we've gotten a lot of written information today and over the weekend. So if it's in writing already, it would be helpful not to have you repeat that, please. And secondly, if you can keep your comments brief. And Mr. Glazer, you had a comment?
It's a procedural question. Are we going to adjourn at 7:30? And the reason I ask is knowing that the Planning Commission is going to be looking at this work probably before we meet again. I would urge us one way or another to find a way to look at the big focus areas, because it would seem to me, given the public input that's been gleaned there and the discussion we've had, we could probably assist the consultants and staff in moving that forward. And I would just ask us not to allow this meeting to end without having considered the focus areas.
Agree, and yeah, I think we always strive to try to wrap these up within 2 hours, but this is a big agenda item and deserves its day in the sun. Again, there are other opportunities as this goes forward for folks to continue to provide dialogue, either written or publicly at meetings. So yes, I think the chair's point, if you submitted things in writing, we've got it. We hear you. If there's folks that haven't submitted anything and want to say a few words related to this, that's great. But to John, to your point, Commissioner Glazer, that we need to get through all of the land use items. We do have some information from the consultants on the focus areas that were a big part of our workshop. Some good information to share. So yeah, we've still got a lot to cover. So don't probably plan on wrapping up at 7:30.
Chair Schoeneman, it appears we have two folks that are ready to make public comment on this area that the GPAC has just talked about. And I also wanted to note that committee member Zan may need to step out for a few and then he'll return. So we're just going to note when he steps out and he'll come back. But at your pleasure, we have Catherine Lambert, Christiane Robbins, and now Ginger Gregory, who would like to speak about Gazleta.
I think that I am very reluctant to do that because we have so much to do. I do note that we had Ms. Gregory's comments in writing, and we have so much more to finish on tonight. So I have to defer to staff, but I would like to have us move forward if we can toward the focus areas, et cetera. Michelle Dame had a comment as well.
Michelle.
Procedural question. I was going to ask if we could possibly have the public comment time to 2 minutes to give people a chance to speak and to also allow the committee to get through all of the agenda items in anticipation of the Planning Commission meeting and making sure we answer all those questions.
I was going to suggest that as well. Chair Schoeneman, we could, at the chair's pleasure, we could limit public comment to less than 3 minutes per speaker and still encourage folks to keep it as brief as possible.
Well, let's do that then, please.
Okay, I'm going to get my timer ready and then also I'll unmute someone in just a moment here. So I'm going to change it to 2 minutes and we'll start with Catherine Lambert. Catherine, I have pushed unmute. Are you, oh, there you are. Are you able to speak?
Thank you. I want to appreciate all the dialogue around this particular property. And I understand the need for housing. I've participated in a number of the workshops. I'm a resident at 1111 and 1117 Hilton Avenue, which is in Coventry Manor. I also live in San Francisco, so I'm sort of like an outsider in a funny way. However, I do want to say that this is the gateway to Napa. And after looking at the entire city and this planning process, there are so many opportunities for densification of this community. It's a very sprawled out community, suburban in many ways. It lacks a lot of activity and passion and things that we want to have in a very in a city kind of area of the downtown and suburban areas around it. But I would like to say that I actually disagree that this particular gateway should be developed. It would be a disadvantage to the city. We'd become a kind of extension of American Canyon instead of the gateway to Napa Valley, encouraging people to stay in the downtown area and to visit and to participate in the community. We need to preserve the natural resources that we have. Water is an issue. Earthquakes are an issue. Traffic is an issue. There's so many issues around this particular site. I'm all for housing. I am committed to the fact that the consultants have found numerous other locations within this city to densify. I also am an architect, and also professor, and I am very, very knowledgeable about these issues. So I just want to support this process and voice my opinions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker will be, I'm sorry for mispronouncing her name, Christiane Robbins, and I'm pushing allow to talk. Christiane, are you there? Christiane? I see that you're now unmuted. Can you try speaking? I can try coming back in a minute. I do have Christiane Robbins unmuted at this point. I'm going to go ahead and mute her for now and go to the next speaker, and we can always circle back. I'm going to put a pause there. Ginger Gregory is the next speaker. Ginger, can you try speaking and see if we can hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I know I submitted a letter and I'm not going to reread it or anything, but there was one thing that I didn't include. There are two other current and proposed projects within this area. One's a 14-unit complex of townhouses that's already being built on Foster Road. It's in between Imola and Snow School. And then also today's local paper described the 23 planned apartments for Freeway Drive, just north of the intersection with Imola Avenue. And these would be rented at market rate, which is $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment. And there was no mention of addressing affordable housing for either of these sites. And it's just a statement because this other property that is just so gorgeous and beautiful, and the gateway to our whole community, our whole valley, there's just so much to lose by having that be the only place where all the affordable housing goes. I hope that I know there are other places in town. I respect everything you guys are doing with looking for all this housing. And I'm an advocate for that too. But at the same time, this gateway that we have, it's a precious thing, and we're a tourist economy. And so once the gateway is gone, once that's gone, it's gone forever. And it makes it less appealing to drive into the Napa Valley for all the reasons people come here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will go to Patty Kinder and then Victoria Lancaster. Patty, I have just unmuted you. Can you try speaking? Patty? Patty, can you try speaking? I have you unmuted, it looks like. Okay, I'm actually gonna go ahead and remute Patty, and we can give her a chance to, if she wants to speak after we come back around. So now we're gonna go to Victoria. I'm gonna push allow to talk, and I'm gonna unmute Victoria. Just a moment here while Zoom thinks about that. Victoria, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, go ahead and speak, please.
Hello, Victoria Lancaster. I'm a longtime resident right off Foster Road, and this issue has come up many times over the years. The neighborhood obviously is greatly concerned about a large-scale development on this property for all the reasons that we've mentioned, and I won't go over them again. But I do want to say that it is concerning to me that it's being said that the focus in Napa should be on affordable housing when, you know, the opportunities to create affordable housing are not being met here. And like just the previous speaker was talking about two developments that are not being designated affordable. You also had the 500 units off of Soscol, the Braden Apartments. 500 units that could have cut your 2,000 unit deficit of affordable housing that was not taken into consideration. So to say that Napa is planning on trying to put in affordable housing seems disingenuous to me. And it feels like this Gazleta property is now the sacrificial lamb that's being sent to planning and to the city council to meet this need to show some sort of effort to create housing. And we don't want it. The people of Napa, the people of this area, we don't want to see that happen to this beautiful area. And that's my thoughts for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair Shinneman. We're going to go to Sam and Rose now, and then we'll circle back to see if either Patty or Christiane wish to make comments. Sam and Rose, I think I have you unmuted. Can you check it out and see?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, great, thank you. I'm Rose, obviously, not Sam.
Yes.
But I just want to also add or say I have been a resident here on Napa on Foster Road for 22 years. And I know a good 10, 12 years ago, this program had come up and we had very little time to organize ourselves to, as a community, come together. But we did, and we housed it at the Snow School auditorium or multi-purpose room, and it became standing room only. So it goes to show that we were not just opposing Foster Road or the community close-knit here. It went into the wide variety of Napa also that supported us. So again, we had very little time as a community or a small area here to organize and to get the word out. We ran as fast as we could, but we are now spreading it as fast as we could. And I know there will be more letters and more concern about this area because it is the gateway to Napa. And we will be probably reviewing all of those issues that we're concerned about. It obviously went to bed after the 08 economy that crashed. I'm assuming that's one of the main reasons why it just went away. And here we are again, I'm not sure. But anyway, I just want to say that I'm happy for all of you. I understand where you're coming from. Housing is a problem for all of us, our children, our grandchildren, so forth. But we have to use our heads, what is open space and what isn't, and what we're doing to a community as a whole with traffic, earthquake, water, police, fire, you name it, as also Napa Pipe was another huge development concern that we're waiting on with, you know, all the different development also. So anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate all of your concerns and all that you're doing for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Chair Shinneman, we may have Patty Kinder. I did send a message to Christiane, did not get a response, and I'm not certain that she does want to speak. I'm going to try unmuting Patty one more time. Patty, you're unmuted. Could you please try addressing the GPAC? Not hearing anything, so I'm going to go ahead and remute Patty and see if there's any other hands raised of folks who would like to speak. Looks like we have Mark Harold, so I'm going to unmute Mark Harold. Mark, you've been unmuted. Would you like to address the GPAC?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thanks. So I talked a little earlier about this. I've lived here in town in the city limits for 30 years in West Browns Valley. I just want to say that, you know, I commuted to Martinez and Rodeo and Richmond all these years as an engineer, and I'd come back. And when I came over that 29 bridge with that huge view of up valley and over the river and the wetlands, and including the Stewart Dairy and the Gazleta property, my blood pressure would go down just because it was such a nice entrance to the valley. You know, it wasn't like I was driving into Concord or Santa Rosa. You know, I was coming into Napa, and you really got a sense of the agricultural nature of the valley just from that view coming over the bridge, right? So whatever we do with this property, I understand the pressure with housing, It's got to be very thoughtful and very scenic and not crowd right up against any of the roads, you know, especially definitely not a sound wall. That would be ugly. So sorry, Bernie, but that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to mute Mark. And it looks like Christiane does have her hand up again. So I'm going to try unmuting her again. Christiane, I have you unmuted. Would you like to try addressing the GPAC? I'm worried that your microphone is not working because you are unmuted and we cannot hear you. So I'm going to encourage you to send in your written comments if you haven't already, because yeah, we can't hear your comment at this time. Looks like Patty is still here. I'm going to give Patty one more try here. Patty, you are now unmuted. Please try addressing the GPAC. Okay, we're not able to hear Patty either. I'm going to go ahead and remute Patty. And I don't see any other hands of folks who have not attempted to at least connect with all of you.
I think I would, on that very notion, I think we need to move on if we're going to get something done before midnight tonight. So with that, we'd like to move into the corridors, and I know Rajiv and
sorry.
Da-da-da.
That was your 2 minutes, Chuck. Sorry. Okay. I'll turn it off now.
Rajiv, it's nice to see you, and Jordan, it was nice to see you a moment ago.
I can't hear anything. Do you want me to go forward?
Please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just thought that I was waiting to get a cue from you. Good evening. Great to see you all. Delighted to see, you know, so much participation in here. I'm going to go through more quickly than I anticipated with this presentation to allow time for some meaningful discussion. Just as a reminder, the chair noted earlier that we've had 9 meetings previously. At this meeting, our anticipation is to review the preferred plan, make recommendations, and we have other upcoming meetings, and I'm going to talk about those in a second. This is where we are, you know, in the process here. We have completed a lot of work to date. This is where we are right now, and then we are going to go, this is 2020, this is 2021. We still have several months of work ahead of us. This is the preferred plan will go to the Planning Commission, then to the City Council. In the meantime, while they are reviewing the preferred plan, we will be having meetings on specific topics on the general plan elements. And I just want to remind everyone that after the preferred plan goes to the Planning Commission and the City Council, we will give the public one more opportunity through an open house to give us specific comments on specific strategies as we develop them together with the GPAC. And all of this will be compiled together. There will still be a public review draft of the general plan that will be prepared, made available hopefully in March, along with the draft EIR. And then we still need to go through an adoption and a hearings process. So a lot of opportunities still for public comments and review and adjustment on our part. Following this meeting, it is our anticipation to meet October, November, December to pick up. The general plan has quite a few elements for us to pick 2 or 3 of them at each time, at each meeting. And at the meeting on number 11, which will be in early October, we intend looking at the land use and community design element, community services, and also health and safety elements. And then early November, we'll be looking at transportation, natural resources, and sustainability elements. And in early December, historic resources, open space, and recreation, and also, you know, economic development elements. I just want to point out, just given the amount of information that's in here, in these elements, clearly the GPAC is not going to be able to go literally through policy by policy. So it is our goal to keep the discussion and the presentation of these materials to a high level, key policies or key strategies only for review, along with some, you know, key maps, and then leave the later, you know, the detailed policy development effort to the planners for follow-up later on. So moving on to the meetings we've had recently, we had a survey out there, 550 responses, over 1,000 comments. And the GPAC directed us to host a meeting focused on the corridors and the focus areas, and that's what we did. We had a very robust participation, 100 community members in there. We also did a focus area surveys. There were videos prepared. Those are made available on the website, and we had 100 responses to that as well. So all in all, I think we got a robust amount of feedback on the strategies. Highlights, there was strong support for most of the focus area approaches that the GPAC has been discussing. Respondents generally supported increasing allowable building heights along corridors, although there are certain differences in recommendations for the specific corridors. So I'm going to go through those pretty quickly. There was a great deal of support for walking and biking improvements and more mixed-use development and enhanced streetscapes. And also a lot of support for local grocery stores and businesses. This is combining, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is combining the input that we got in the different corridors. The green color is the Tranca Street corridor, blue is Jefferson, Soskell and Lincoln, and this purple color is Soskell and Imola. So those are the 4 ones in here. Here are the various improvements that we asked people about. And here are the responses we got. People could pick any number of the improvements. What I want to highlight is that the greatest support was for bicycle infrastructure improvements along all the corridors, all 4 bars, all 4 corridors, very high, approaching 80% support for those. A lot of support for transit, improving bus corridors, bus lanes, improving transit options, and so on. Also, a lot of support for walkability. Another instance where all of the recommendations for all the corridors are over 60%, over 70% in some instances for improving walkability, walkable city blocks with wider sidewalks and more paths to better connect development to surroundings. Then many other places with the red line indicating a 50% support, you can see virtually so many of the, almost all of these strategies had a great amount of support. Some other notable highlights, along Jefferson Street, desire to have storefronts open directly to the street to encourage people to walk by. So that's one place, one corridor where people wanted to see a greater pedestrian building interaction. And lastly, the very last cluster of bars that you see over here, taller building heights, 6 to 8 stories would be acceptable. That was along a Soskell and Imola corridor only. There was lesser support for that level of height on the other corridors. A lot of detail, the details are out there in the survey report that we sent over to you. I'm just presenting some highlights over here. The desire to, this is, what specific strategies do you agree or disagree within existing neighborhoods? And it's interesting that we were just having a dialogue about that. There continues to be a desire to protect open space at the perimeter of the city. Very, very high, strong agreements, 70%, for that. There is also a desire to protect existing retail and shopping areas. And then there are, comments and preferences all over the place about allowing townhomes and multifamily development or increasing densities in existing neighborhoods. People agree and disagree with those statements. I'm going to very quickly actually have Brennan give you focused input on what we heard for each one of the 4 focus areas, as well as downtown, and also what we are recommending in the preferred plan. Brendan, I can forward it for you. We're not going to switch the presentation, so I'm just going to forward. Brendan, you go for it.
Thank you, Rajiv. So we brought together for the community workshop different strategies for people to vote on. And we had around 100 people attend the workshop. And again, this largely reflects what we heard in the survey too, with a lot of people supporting bike lanes, more street trees, pedestrian comfort and safety, and mixed use development along Trancas. And then we gave the option for people to vote on different streetscapes. And about 58% of the voters said that they would be comfortable to increase allowed heights by 2 stories. And we'll show what that's like in a few slides.
Yeah, so the top graphic shows the components that people want to support for Trancas. And you can see mixed use development, 83%, pedestrian comfort, 83%. And majority wanting to increase allowable heights by 2 stories out there. Okay, next slide here.
So this was just a summary of some of the strategies that we were proposing earlier and now too. So enable revitalization of older uses with mixed uses, preserve automobile sales and vibrant commercial, while all promoting more pedestrian-oriented design, trees, sidewalks, and crossings within Trencas. Here's the supported streetscape that we showed in both the survey as well as in the workshop. And people generally supported the streetscape at the bottom with taller buildings along Trencas.
So I would just add for Trencas, we are still looking into the possibility, the physical feasibility of accommodating all of the components people want on the corridor without taking away transportation lanes, specifically the desire to have a separated bike lane that got a lot of high marks from people. We are still evaluating the physical feasibility, but in terms of people's preferences, the view that you have in here are the trees, the building heights, and generally the streetscape that people supported.
Mm-hmm. Similarly, we asked similar questions for Jefferson. So likewise, we received a lot of support for these approaches, including mixed use development, bike lanes or bicycle signage, more street trees, and increasing pedestrian comfort. We received the least responses for on-street parking in terms of strategies that people support, which is also very interesting. And then in terms of the building heights, again, around 59% of the respondents said that they would be comfortable with increasing allowed building heights by 1 story. Again, some of the Jefferson strategies include creating an active street frontage, incorporating pedestrian-friendly street design, introduce community hubs to promote local businesses and offices. And then as we're going through our design and research for these corridors, Jefferson actually appears to be a potential candidate for a road diet. So that's something that we'll work with our engineer and work with city staff moving forward. This was the supported streetscape as shown during the workshop, and people voted to have this concept. In terms of Soscol and Lincoln, generally everyone supported having more walkability and more mixed use. For this one in particular, there was a strong support for continuous open space along Napa River. That's a very important consideration. Retaining some of the maker production-oriented uses that are currently in the light industrial area of that of Soscol and Lincoln. On-street parking, again, one of the least of people's concerns, which is at 9%. And then, of course, doing streetscape improvements like bike lanes, street trees, and pedestrian comfort and safety. And then when shown the different options for building heights, again, 60% of the respondents said that they would be okay increasing allowed building heights by 2 stories. So some of the strategies that we're presenting are to keep light industrial and business hubs, to extend hospitality commercial along Napa River, infill big box stores and service lots with mixed use, and connect Napa River Trail along the corridor there. Here is, we didn't get a chance to have the streetscape fully rendered in last time. So now here's a more accurate view of what this would look like with some of the buildings, of course, retaining their character. Then over time, piecemeal by piecemeal, buildings would be developed. And last, we asked about Soscol and Amola. Similarly, people supported mixed-use developments, bike lanes, more street trees, and pedestrian comfort and safety opportunities for this corridor. And then when presented the different heights and urban design strategies, again, 69% supported increasing allowed building heights by 2 stories.
This is the map, sorry, Brendan.
No problem. So some of the strategies include to look at transforming Soscol Avenue into a well-designed and attractive boulevard, retain the automotive row while enabling intensification and beautification, and then reimagine South Napa Marketplace as a mixed-use community in the future. This is the supported streetscape that we showed during the presentation, which shows an incremental building of more intense buildings along So School.
We also asked people, this is in the bigger citywide survey for which we had more than 500 responses, what people would like to see happen in downtown. Downtown was not a focus of the workshop itself. And we've collected, responses in terms of the things that we asked people about. And the green being strongly disagree, and to the very right, this orangish color being strongly agree. So people most strongly agree about promoting a family-friendly activities, promoting a grocery store, more local amenities, and they do not want to see 120-foot tall, 10 or 11 story tall buildings. You can see that strongly disagree about half the people with that. But a lot of almost everything else, aside from the very tallest building heights that we tested, have good support, including promoting housing in the edges of downtown, and so on. Mixed support for promoting hotels and visitor serving amenities, but everything else got very high. We have not, honestly, nor has this committee, spent that much time on downtown, because the downtown has a specific plan, and uses approach and definitions are currently defined by the downtown specific plan. While no land use changes have been currently discussed by GPAC, the land use and community design element that you will see at the next meeting does provide an opportunity for us to provide a certain level of future direction for any changes, adjustments to the downtown specific plan, or any other strategies that GPAC would like to see. These maps, gosh, I don't even know if we want to comb through these maps, but you've already actually covered many of the sites in the discussion that we had, and the corridors reflect the discussion that we've had and the recommendations from people. We are very, happy to see a great amount of consensus by people, the participants in the survey and the workshop. So those have put it in here in our recommendations for your consideration, as are the recommendations on the densities, intensities, and FARs. And you've discussed some of these. I know there was a discussion of the residential mix using the densities in there, but these designations, the FARs, have been reviewed by the GPAC before. Everything is folded in here. So that's really as far as the corridors go. And since I don't know how many presentations you're going to want from me, I'm going to run through the remaining 4 slides so that you can have a unified discussion. Just to give you a highlight of what's going to come before you at the next few meetings. In terms of the general plan framework, each element is going to have guiding policies and then implementing policies. The guiding policies will be similar to the goals in the current general plan. And that's generally what we'll be bringing to you in your review at the future meetings, not the detailed geeky like planning policies that will implement those goals, but the bigger picture direction. We will also bring to you some of the supporting maps that go along with that. So for example, if you discuss the transportation chapter and there's a direction, a desire to see more walkability and pedestrian orientation, we'll have a bikeways map for you to look at as well at those meetings. So giving you enough to review so that you can be comfortable in the directions we give you. This is how we are envisioning the grouping of the elements themselves. And I explained that to you previously. So in the first chunk, we'll be covering the purple ones and the orange ones, and then these bluish ones at the third meeting that we have with the GPAC. We've also prepared for you a matrix here showing the guiding principles that the GPAC developed, the 10 guiding principles that we have, and the correlation with the general plan elements that we have. So the general plan elements that we will be including in this general plan, and these include both state required elements as well as optional elements such as historic resources and economic development over here. The filled in circle implies that there is the most close relationship, and an open circle implies that there is a relationship, but not as strong. So as we're looking through these elements, that would be your opportunity to see, do these goals, do these guiding principles capture the essence of what we are seeking to achieve with these guiding principles? So the preferred plan will be reviewed by the Planning Commission in September, City Council in October, and the GPAC will continue forward, at our next meeting, moving along with the elements, because I know there's a lot in there and there's a desire on your part to be looking through those as well. And just as a reminder, here is the schedule again, and that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions, and sorry if I feel like I've been talking a little too fast.
Thank you, Rajiv. I think we can take that down. Thank you. I have a number of questions and things, and others may as well. We really didn't talk much about the Imola corridor, not the Imola-Soskell corridor, but I know the NVTA put together a whole corridor study, and we've got, how does that tie in with what's been designated the River Park Shopping Center with corridor mixed use high, as well as going further east and how it connects with Napa Valley College. So any issues with that with the GPAC? Patrick, please.
Yeah, I think you're right to point out the work that's already been done by NVTA through their almost year plus long process. That is broadly focused on transportation, not quite as much land use. But I think that it would behoove us in efficiency to look to that document and kind of give it a thumbs up as a deliberative, detailed analysis of the opportunities for activating and engaging the Imola corridor, and move our attention on to other key areas that have, I think, more contentious questions open to them. I think the one thing I'll add to that is that the NVTA process is just right now wrapping up and will eventually be adopted by the NVTA board, which includes 2 members of the Napa City Council. So I feel like if we can effectively say, once NVTA says yes to this, that the GPAC is comfortable, I think that's a good place to save some time on our end.
Thank you. Howard, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the corridors in general, but Jefferson in particular, I'm one of the people, and it sounds like the majority of people, both on the GPAC and in the community, support the higher density approach that we've suggested for those 4 corridors. On the other hand, I'm a little nervous about some of the higher density designations that are in the neighborhoods, the residential neighborhoods adjacent to those corridors, Jefferson in particular, whether it's Old Town down by Fuller Park or whether it's the Alphabet Streets. So, and this goes back to the guiding principle that speaks to neighborhood preservation. And those are 2 of the older neighborhoods that we're now apparently looking at densities that could make a significant change there. So that might be worthy of some further evaluation.
Thank you. Do we have other comments on the corridors, GPAC? John, please.
Thank you. I completely agree with what Howard just said. I think we need to be mindful of the neighborhoods, and I think that the study made it really clear that the values that people applied to the focus areas, they also are wanting applied to their own neighborhoods in terms of walkability, access to stores and shopping and recreation and so on. I also want to second what Patrick just said. I feel that I hope everybody will get a chance, if they haven't already, to take a look at the NVTA plan. I think it's very consistent with the data that our consultants are bringing back to us from our focus area study. And I'd like to see us at some point, if it's inappropriate tonight, because nobody or not enough people have had a chance to see it, then I'd say, yeah, let's make sure we take it up sooner rather than later. It's so consistent with the values of walkability, bicycle access, pedestrian safety, public transit access, that I just think it goes hand in glove with the focus areas that we've already been considering.
Thank you. Michelle, please.
Thank you, Chair. I did have a question on the Imola Avenue, since we're not going to have much discussion about it. What is happening with River Park Shopping Center and that block of land between Coombs and Highway 29, or Coombs and South the Freeway Drive or Golden Gate area? It's not for uses, it's more for the transportation corridor. So what is GPAC or the city doing about shopping center and those areas there? I feel like I'm very passionate about that area. I feel like it gets a little neglected, and I just would like to have more thoughtful conversation about what can be done for that area.
Thank you. But I did see as an example that the River Park Shopping Center had a designation of mixed use corridor high, which would certainly open up the possibility for the owners or another owner to completely revamp that center.
Yeah, it's my understanding their plan is they're not interested in conversations they've had with the city about how to approve that shopping center. So it may be falling on deaf ears. So how do we encourage something that's more fitting for our city than maybe Sacramento, where that developer is from?
Thank you.
I know that detail is not for now, but.
Yeah. Other members of GPAC on the corridors? Ricky, please.
Well, this is more kind of specific with regards to Rajiv's presentation overall. So some includes corridors, but there's a few points that I had just about outreach and in general, everything. So looking at the Alternatives Community Outreach Report, the major the correspondents were from Browns Valley area for the neighborhood responses, Alta Heights, Fuller Park, Napa Bajo. So the tendency is more affluent areas. So my question is, kind of going forward, how can we make sure that we are continuing to engage? I believe that Rajiv did say, or Mike, that we will have another outreach opportunity. So I just want to make sure that we're mindful of that. It was really good to see that some people overall feel well connected to services and amenities, connected to the neighbors and community. It was really interesting to see that people don't feel like shopping and services are easy to access without a car. And then just another thing about the demographics, just looking at the full report, large percentage of the correspondents were between the ages of 45 to 64, 65 and over. Not many young adults or folk below the 18 years of age. So this begs the question, are we doing what we can to ensure that we're reaching and inviting different voices to the table? And how can we approach the working men and women of our community who are constantly stressed to keep a roof over their head and food on the table? We need to ensure that their voices are heard too. For the virtual workshop portion, it looks like just over 100 community members joined the workshop. At our last GPAC meeting, I asked if we would do one in Spanish, and it was kind of left vague. So I would like to, bring that up again. And also, lastly, my last point is just over 60% of the workshop attendees had attended a general plan meeting. So again, just going back to some of the points that I've pointed out, these are folk that are engaged, which is great. That's all my points that I wanted to mention.
I just want to quickly add that we did have all of the videos that we produced for each corridor available in Spanish as well. We translated and narrated those in Spanish as well. All of the surveys were available. We've had good, through the concerted efforts of many of the good members in the GPAC, concerted efforts to get more Spanish-speaking populations. I know Bernie specifically reached out to groups the last time, and we got 100+ responses just based on that outreach that was done. We're doing all we can. I know we had smaller numbers of younger people participate in the surveys, and for that very reason, we highlighted, actually, we broke down some of the questions responses where we saw some differences to highlight what the younger folks wanted, so their voices were not lost in the aggregate numbers. So we're doing what we can both to reach out as well as call attention to those voices that are not as dominant in the conversations.
Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments on the corridor areas? Ted, please.
I just have a clarifying question about the increasing the height limits in those corridors. Are all or at least for the 4 corridors outside of downtown, are the existing height limits the same for each of those corridors, or is there any difference among them?
There are slight differences, and I think when we presented those videos and the images previous to you, we labeled at the bottom of each one of those slides what the existing height limits are for each corridor. Yeah, so they're slightly different. They're similar. They're slightly higher in the South. I mean, you can see the 5-story buildings going up along Soskel, for example, 4 to 5-story buildings going up out there, which are currently not allowed in Jefferson. So just slight differences do exist.
Thank you. Patrick, you had a comment.
Yeah, I have a list of a couple of questions on each of the corridors, and I want to be really respectful of everybody's time tonight. If it makes more sense to either quickly go over each of the 4 one-page documents that are in the design strategy doc, or if we just want to address them all kind of collectively. I don't want to get too in the weeds, but I also want to make sure that we're providing enough feedback for staff.
I suspect collectively might be nice, because I know that there are a few other areas that would be great if we could address tonight. Patrick.
Oh, okay. So yeah, a couple questions on the Soskel-Imola corridor. There was a number of notations in the document that was circulated regarding bridging gaps in street grids to improve connectivity and accessibility in the neighborhoods to the east, filling in the South Terrace connection on Capitola, a couple of additional bridges. That's, as somebody who lives in that general neighborhood, that's a bit concerning to me, and I don't think that's gotten quite a bit as much community input as some of the other connections that have been proposed elsewhere in the city. So that's something that's concerning to me, to discourage cut-through traffic and additional vehicle miles traveled, but I don't know if that's something that's interesting to anybody else. And then specifically on the Soskel and Lincoln site, I also noticed that there are a number of different zoning designations that would, or land use designations, I'm sorry, that would take existing, what I see as light industrial and redesignate them as commercial areas. And I think specifically on North Bay Drive, and we talked about this at a prior meeting, there are a number of light industrial uses. There's a lumber supply company. There's a couple of other businesses out there that are more in the light industrial world than they are commercial. And I'm curious as to why that change was made. I'll stop there.
I will defer to staff on some of those questions, please.
I'm not exactly as familiar with the zoning out there. I do know that this very issue of the production distribution resources has come up in the past. And I know committee member Ban has been concerned about not losing the small number of businesses we have out there, and I think it's been our intention to actually preserve those. it's entirely possible that, I don't know, it's the Walmart or something out there that currently may have a different designation than the use that already exists. So it's possible that we recognize what's really on the ground as opposed to what the designation might be. But the intention was to preserve those while allowing some other uses, some other, a little bit more additional height while preserving those uses. Well, that's the fundamental intent out there in that region. And I think, we and staff can comb through that area, one more time to make sure we are capturing the designations correctly. And we'll work with Mike to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rajiv, if I may.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the maps right now, and that those are actually local commercial zoned, or for the existing general plan.
Existing general plan are okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So those areas are currently community commercial.
Okay.
Thank you. Michelle, please.
Thank you. I have a general question, and this has to do with section 3, the virtual workshop in one of the larger documents, and it has to do with the increase in stories in each of the focus areas. It says 60% support increasing by 2 stories, 59%, 69%. And I'm wondering if we could add to those paragraphs what increasing by 2 stories is. I don't know if it was in footnotes in those sections, but I don't know what increasing by 2 stories is. And it would be easier to read it in those paragraphs rather than going backwards and trying to find it in another reference document, if that's okay. And then for the Soscol area, the 6 to 8 stories, I don't support that personally. Considering everything that's happening in these days, I would hate to see a bunch of vacant buildings. Whether or not that changes in 20 years, I don't know. And then a general question for neighborhood questions. This had to do with principle number 4, question 5, allow townhomes or multifamily development of same scale as single family homes in all neighborhoods. I was curious if you could provide a better definition of that to me. So for example, if you go out into Browns Valley, Linda Vista, Redwood area, is that saying you have a house in that, but then you can put a multifamily house or a large set of apartments right in between a residential block? I just would like to have a better understanding of what that definition is. And then also general question on basically item C, where it's supporting more stories. It says, quote, in portions with well-designed pedestrian-oriented buildings. So I guess in portions, I'm wondering, is planning, as projects come in for requests, we're not going to have one big mass of concrete going down a street. Are there going to be anchors and then filled in, and then you're going to be able to see the hillsides and those types of things? And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other questions or issues, please? Bernie, please.
So just wanted to bring some folks back to Soscol and Lincoln area, particularly on Jackson Street and Soscol, where we have the public serving designation. There's 2 lots on there, particularly at the corner of Jackson and Soscol. I'd like to see that redesignated to something else other than public serving, just so we can prepare an opportunity for future use. I think that creates a good opportunity for housing in that section if the area is no longer to be used for public serving. Medium to high density residential, I'd like maybe get some feedback on that, because we're uniquely positioned right next to Soscol Avenue, which is a high capacity road, and there's no existing neighborhoods, and there's a lot of commercial use. So that would kind of create a rated complete neighborhood by adding residential units there, and would also support the business community there without breaking a current neighborhood. So just wanted to bounce that idea off with the GPAC.
we have other comments on that issue? I know in a larger scale, Diet Badia has been retained by the city to look at all of the publicly owned lands throughout the city. The corporation yard and the bus yard being two of them. And I think that all of those make sense to have an underlying general plan designation as Bernie sort of outlined there. So overall, I'm just looking at the group. Do we, in general, are folks fairly happy with the corridor outlines as stated, although with the kinds of comments that both Michelle and many others, I think staff has picked those up along with Rajiv and others. Do those sound appropriate? I've seen some sideways. It's a combination. Okay. I think, do I see any thumbs down? Hard for me to see. Okay, staff, I think we have a thumbs up and a thumbs sideways. I know that downtown was mentioned in the staff report, and Rajiv, you mentioned it as well, both downtown and the Oxbow district. I think both of those forcing and other uses need additional work. The Oxbow most recently had an Urban Land Institute study that was prepared 2 years ago, taken to the council a year and a half ago in January, that spoke to the need in the Oxbow district having overall of what that district would look like. So, work to be done there, obviously. I'm trying to move forward quickly because I know trying to be very respectful of everybody's time. Some members of the GPAC have suggested that the site where the Ritz Hotel has been approved for probably most of our lifetimes, if there have been some consideration about designating that with a residential mixed use. Is there any appetite for that? Is there, and I'd love to have comments on any of those things. John, please.
Mine is a more general comment, but I think it takes into account your question, and that is, I was noting in the written communications concerns from a number of people about the non-conforming uses and the orphans. And I'm wondering if staff has a plan for addressing those. It sounds like in the last general plan process, it was at least perceived by some of the landowners that these non-conforming uses were created, and it would just make sense to me that we have some mechanism for cleaning them up.
Staff, do you have any comments on that?
Certainly, there's a few that were outlined in your staff report that we've had some specific requests come in where property owners have requested for us to consider that. And that's certainly something as we go forward to include those considerations as we move through this process. So yeah, definitely on our radar. The intent is not to try to continue nonconformities and try to get those in conformance where we can or where it's appropriate. So those are all definitely good considerations to move forward.
And my follow-up is what in fact happens procedurally with the property, as our chair just mentioned with the Ritz property? Is there a point at which the current zoning goes away and it needs to be rezoned?
The zoning is on the property. The actual zoning of the property stays with the land. Now they have entitlements to build, and as long as they're performing certain levels of work to maintain those entitlements, then they stay valid. So, but the zoning goes with the land and would continue with the land.
Well, if the underlying general plan designation were to change, that would continue obviously to allow the hotel, but indeed if the property owner thought that perhaps the hotel was no longer a viable option, mixed use or of residential and some commercial, there might be a welcome change.
Correct.
Does that make sense to folks? I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up on that. Okay. That gives you some sense. I'm not trying to get too loopy here. It's only 8 o'clock at night. I'm still getting tired. There's been some discussion in traditional residential areas about whether or not bed and breakfast offices, et cetera, should be conditionally permitted or allowed uses. I know there was a lot of emails and letters sent to us regarding that. Does the GPAC have strong feelings one way or the other? I'm inclined to, as I've mentioned before, to make those conditional uses, not to not allow them, but just more that you got to prove your case.
Right there.
Lauren, please. I know that you and I might disagree.
Near and
That's
dear,
okay.
near and dear to my heart. I totally
thank you.
feel within reason that some of those properties, especially the historic houses, need, when I got my property, what was ability to use it was to be a hair salon, an office, or a residence, period. I think we need to have that opened up. I think we need to allow more uses for some of those properties in that area. Not saying there's an open, that everything is viable, but to definitely have the ability, especially some of those older historic properties, have more uses than a hair salon, an office, and just residential. And I say the residential part only because I know personally, as others do, that restoring, especially a historic house, is not for the faint of heart and will take some amazing effort and resources to do going forward in the future. I think, if we want to preserve that area in any way, shape, or form, we need to really look at that and create some new opportunities and policies. My suggestion has been that any owner of a historic property that meets the bar of a historic landmark status, i.e. That's a 2 or 3 year process to go through the Mills Act, to go through all the things that are involved with that ability to become a registered historic landmark, if you will, that those property owners that are able to do that have the ability then to put those properties in new uses potentially that keeps them preserved and keeps them operating for some time to come. Within reason, of course, I'm taking into consideration neighbors and such as well, obviously. But it's more than just having B&Bs, which I know are also controversial at times, especially deeper within the historic area. And I do believe that we need to really look at this and identify perhaps in the some of those key properties, which ones could fit those ability to have new and improved or different kinds of uses other than ones I described. And one other comment I was going to also say previously, what is, and I haven't heard a lot about, is the South Garden area of Copia. I know that that has been also on the radar for several people for a long time, with the ability to potentially put, that would be more high level property housing, but also retail and such there. And I know that that's still in the works and also up for discussion going forward as to what is that going to happen in that Oxbow area. Thank you.
Thank you. We have other comments from GPAC members? Do we see any waved hands? Bernie, please.
I was just going to mention that I agree with a lot of what Lauren Ackerman said, but also making sure we still have process of approving the uses, because I think that historic area is so unique to Napa. It's not the same as other neighborhoods. So having that balance of preserving the history and that neighborhood and alternate uses by having a process to approve those. use it.
Yeah, I mean, certainly points have been well made. We can look at altering the definition to say that in order to incentivize preservation of historic resources, and we can say designated landmarks, whether local, state, or national level, we can provide a slightly greater array of uses for those properties that seek to do the preservation and not just open the entire area up, regardless. So that's certainly something we can look at.
Yeah, and I would just add, it's a huge opportunity for us that we in Napa downtown have not really looked at. And I think it's something that, the whole concept, especially if the wine industry is going to have some hiccups for some time to come, which I truly believe it will, then we need to also have the ability to have what I would call, historic tourism, if you will, and or the ability to showcase some of those properties, have a different kind of that comes to Napa for those kinds of historic resources and preservation. I know myself that I get asked that question all the time, and it's something that we haven't addressed any kind of city policy in any specific way that I think would really look at individual properties with that potential that could do that and incentivize people to restore these houses and keep them for prosperity. It's a huge issue for what we know and love about downtown that we have not properly addressed.
Thank you. Do I have other comments about that, Howard, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It seems like people are saying essentially the same thing in different ways, namely that there should be criteria that have to be satisfied before conversions can be made, which I think just essentially takes us back to what the chair had suggested early on, at least his personal opinion, was conditional approval is probably the way to go. And it's just important to set out what those conditions are carefully.
Thank you. And Lauren and Bernie, I rather agree with the notion of thinking of new uses that at the same time, keeping neighbors and all the rest comfortable. But I think we have to have a broader array as you outlined.
Chair Shinneman, I'm sorry to interrupt. We do have a couple people who put their hands up to provide public comments. So whether that's going to happen now or in whenever this wraps up, I just want to give you a heads up. We have 2 hands raised so far. I know at least one of them is interested in development in historic neighborhoods or speaking to that topic.
In general, are folks relatively satisfied with the conversations we just had? Thumbs up, thumbs sideways? Pretty much thumbs up, thank you. Aaron, why don't we have a couple of quick comments? I'm just trying to, again, be very mindful that we have a few more things to go through.
Okay, so our 2 speakers will be Cindy Water and Elizabeth McKinney. I'm going to start with Cindy. Cindy, I have unmuted you. Let's see. Clicked on unmute. I've unmuted you, Cindy. Can you try addressing the GPAC?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Hi. Okay, I've lived downtown for 30 years, and while I applaud much of the redevelopment that's occurred around our neighborhood, and Ms. Ackerman's superb job with the old Pink House downtown, I want us to be very, very cautious about this because people live here. We have neighbors. We like having a variety of people in our neighborhood. As it is, my husband walks around our neighborhood twice a day, and he sees so many houses that have been turned into bed and breakfasts, Airbnbs, vacation rentals, what have you. And I'm not going to talk about the character of the neighborhood because that's kind of a buzzword for some people. It's a strange expression, but we've got a mixed neighborhood. I have a rental 2 doors over. If it weren't for them, we might not have any children in the neighborhood. I've got, I think that we need to, in particular, be very, very careful about 3rd and 4th Street. That's a frangible area. That's kind of the buffer zone between the commercial district and the residential district. And be very, very cautious about that. Personally, I don't feel comfortable about having someone who works at the desk in community development making a decision about my neighborhood without some sort of public hearing. And, you know, I just think you should be extremely careful. But thank you. I've had a great time watching the meeting. And Chuck Shinneman, you certainly know how to run a meeting. You know, good for you. And now I'll let Elizabeth talk.
Okay, I'm going to mute Cindy and unmute Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I have pushed the unmute button. Can you try? Oh, there we go. Try speaking to the GPAC. Elizabeth? Oh, there you are. Are you there?
Okay, great.
Great. Go
Now
for
it's working. Hi there. Yes, I am going to ask Chuck if he has time for me to read the letter that I wrote. If not, I won't.
Please don't. We have it, and we really, it's really running late.
Okay. Well, what I would like to do is sort of piggyback on Cindy's comments and bring up an additional issue with the idea of having a blanket permission to turn our neighborhoods, our historic residential neighborhoods, into a commercial district. We are vehemently opposed to this. And in fact, preservationists are opposed to this. With all due respect to Lauren, not all historic preservation projects meet the magnitude that hers did. There are many of us as homeowners who have much more modest projects, but they are valuable in terms of the fabric and the history of the district. We want to remain a residential district. We have been supported of bed and breakfasts when they help to preserve a house that might not otherwise be usable by a family in today's terms. But to consider historic houses fair game for tasting rooms and a rampant use of bed and breakfast is not fair to the neighborhood, and it's not good for the neighborhood. The idea that Old Town should provide office space for the city of Napa is, in my mind, really pretty ridiculous. I mean, we have offices we can't fill. So I would like for the committee, respectfully ask that the committee withdraw this idea of a blanket permission for this kind of commercial development in a historic district.
Thank you. I think we did that.
Can I just add on my side, Elizabeth, I am not suggesting that all the residences in historic properties in downtown Napa go to a commercial application. What I am suggesting is in some cases, some of those properties are not going to be ever restored, and they don't have to be to the level that I've done by any stretch, and I'm not suggesting that either. But the economical issue of these kinds of properties is such that we have so many properties in downtown that are not getting restored, that are falling apart, that aren't being used, that aren't being supported, that we have to at least consider some level with the right kinds of caveats and things in that sometimes if you're going to have someone who takes that challenge on, they need to look at the opportunity of what does it take to make that property viable going forward. That's all I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting that it's a blanket commercial thing at all. I too have the ability to be in that property, and I have lived in my own property during difficult times, i.e. fires, earthquakes, everything else. So I understand that concept extremely well. But I also understand the economic issues, and we as a city have an opportunity to address that. That's all I'm saying. And the way to be able to do that is to look at each property uniquely, what kind of bar it sets for its historical character and ability to be able to be substantial for the future and prosperity going forward. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Aaron, was that the last public speaker on that?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to Patrick.
I'll be very brief. I just wanted to thank the public comment, particularly Cindy, regarding her request for public hearings for these kinds of items. Obviously, there's a lot of meat to dive into. I don't think that's something we're going to do tonight. I think it's also more appropriate, frankly, for our policy conversations, more so than our land use and zoning conversations. I've got some pretty significant concerns that I share with the members of public who spoke. So I think I just want to say, if we're going to dive into this, we need a lot more time. And probably tonight is not the night to do so.
Thank you. So I'd like to move on, keep on rocking and rolling here. I did put in just a quick thing on mixed use and industrial. I just want to make sure that in those areas, wineries are allowed use, because there were a lot of other uses listed in various industrial areas, and wineries was not one of them. And I think as small winemakers, and Lauren, I'm sure you're aware of some of the small winemakers who can't afford to buy that winery in the valley, having a small site somewhere and having allowed use of as a small winery is really important. So I just want to have that clarification in those different areas. Are people generally in favor of that?
Yes.
As long as it includes breweries, I'm good.
I'll drink to that.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.
All right, good. Then we get to let's jump into Big Ranch Road. I know we've had some discussions about Big Ranch before, where the proposed designation was mixed use, medium density residential. And my impression was that we generally were okay with that after some discussion. Is that true with folks? But please chime in. So I'm seeing Patrick with a thumbs up. Is that a general consensus of thumbs up in the Big Ranch Road area to designate that as medium density residential? I'm seeing nodded heads, I'm seeing thumbs up. So I think staff, that gives you an idea about that. Thank you. I mentioned before that public serving properties are now being looked at by Rajiv and Company, so I don't know that we need to spend any time on that this evening. One issue that was raised this evening, and something that really hit me this weekend when I was spending time looking at the general plan. If you look at the current general plan and you look at single family neighborhoods, there's a huge amount of delineation of pods in each one of the planning areas around town. And back in presumably this 1998, there was a huge amount of time taken looking at different areas. And I think there's a real concern that the land use in the single family areas that are currently in the draft general plan are very much a broad brush rather than being very specific to neighborhoods. And I don't know that I know we don't have time tonight to delve into this. This is really a big, big issue. I want to issue with whether or not duplexes and triplexes might be allowed by right in single family neighborhoods, but even that is a huge conversation. So I think the single family designations are really going to require a whole lot more conversation. So I'm throwing that open for conversation to all of you. Anybody want to jump in or just acknowledge that that really is an issue? I see Ted with his thumbs up basically saying, I think, Ted, you're saying, yeah, that's a real issue.
Yeah, I'm saying I also agree with you that if it's possible, I would love this committee to have an opportunity to discuss that topic in more depth in the future. I don't know if there's time for that or how that will fit, but that's why my thumb was up.
And I see Michelle had her thumbs up in a similar way, and I think Bernie, you raising a thumbs up, or are you asking a question?
Well, a question or a comment, Mr. Chair. I think that when we get to housing element, we can dive a little bit more into the different neighborhoods and how we can best use that land. I mean, specifically granny units, ADUs. Some neighborhoods can better have better use or are better fit for those triplexes, and ADUs and other places don't. But I think that discussion will be better in the housing element instead of the land use.
Thank you. I think the concern, and I'll get to others in a moment, I think the concern, a lot of folks, I know that I got an email today from somebody I believe it was in the ABC streets, that, gee, our current designation is such and so, and all of a sudden it's mixed, it's medium density residential. And as an example, I'm in Stonecrest, but south of me is Alta Heights. And all of a sudden that's gone from a mix of designations, and all of a sudden it's medium density residential of 8 to 18 units to the acre, which I think if that neighborhood were to find that out, they would there would be pitchforks and branding irons and everything else coming down. So I think we need to have a much clearer and much more complete and detailed look at the single family neighborhoods around the city. I think people really depend on I don't want to say the GPAC, but they certainly depend on the public bodies in the city to understand those more clearly. I think that we have right now is very much a broad brush of general plan designations.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I'll let Howard go.
Howard, please.
Well, actually, it's just pertaining to something that Bernie just said, and I'm asking for clarification from staff here. It's my understanding that the timetable for the housing element, which of course has a life of its own, is such that this committee won't really get to weigh in on that particular element. Is that right?
Yeah, the housing element is probably going to come right on the heels of the adoption of the general plan. I think to the point, we are looking at a broader brush of how we apply residential densities across the city. Are there refinements that can be made to what's presented today? Of course. And I think raising these concerns is a great consideration to put forward for decision makers as we take this forward. The housing element will, in a couple years, our current run runs through 2023. So we'll be following up on the heels of this process with the housing element, which will obviously dive into a lot more policies related to housing and how we achieve those numbers for affordable units. So, but yeah, I think to your point, that some nuance maybe in the designations at this point might be something worth diving into a little deeper.
And as far as ADUs are concerned, a comment was made, our hands are tied because the state now requires us to allow not just accessory dwelling units, but also junior accessory dwelling units in all of the single family areas. So that's just as per state law, but the matter of density is still, within our control. And I, think we'll continue looking at that issue.
Thank you. Steve and then John, please.
Yeah, I can add to that. And it's not just the single family designations, it's the multifamily designations as well that are allowed the ADUs. So in essence, the state has already said that everybody owns a duplex or a triplex. Yeah, I mean, that's where we are right now. So it behooves us that we have the opportunity to, to go through the areas and be, careful about how that all plays out. But that's where we are today. Yeah.
And how will that affect our future needs for housing if we basically double or triple our ADU units against that 2,000 low income or income property capabilities with that kind of, opportunity for people to do?
Sure. John, you had a comment, please?
Yeah, just a quick observation that I found the survey data to be to reveal a little schizophrenia, if you will, or a little kind of mixed messages from the community. They definitely want us to look at more housing, and they definitely want us to preserve single-family housing. And I think that here's another balancing act that's in front of us. And I don't know if that's more, well, in my neighborhood, I want more single-family housing. But it definitely was something that I picked up.
Thank you.
And I know it's late, but I want to remind the GPAC members, when we did the very first survey, because this was brought up, as part of the guiding principle says this in all neighborhoods. At that time, my memory is still there that people said as much they wanted new development in the corridors, but an equal number also wanted density in the neighborhoods. And that's what led us to develop that principle at that time. So I totally agree that when, it's mixed messages and, differences in opinion, and, when you actually get to it, is that what you want or not want, and so on. So we still have our work cut out for us. And I still think we need to continue looking at this subject, and we'll continue working with Mike and Erin to refine those densities and their applications. Yeah.
Thank you. Other comments on this particular issue? Then moving forward, Mike, I know that you and Erin were hoping to have some information about numbers, housing, things like that. It doesn't sound yet, but if I could just tee that up just briefly with you for a minute to give us some ideas what you're hearing, or if it's not appropriate, we can put it off.
Mr. Chair, you broke up in the first part of that, of your messaging.
Must be the glass of wine. Anyway, I was asking staff if they might give us some information, if they would, about the housing ABAG numbers that we've heard about.
Certainly. We took this, sent an update to City Council in their Friday update, looking at the draft preliminary numbers for the RENA allocation from ABAG. And, as Erin, mentioned, we were looking at a lot higher housing requirements for our sixth cycle housing element. The numbers put forward by ABAG have us, and this is across the board, this doesn't break down into affordability levels, but anywhere between 2,500 and 2,720 for the city of Napa's housing allocation for the sixth cycle of that 8-year span. We're also on the hook for, because of the Napa Pipe Agreement, 80% of the county's RENA allocation, which brings us our grand total to 3,368 on the low end and possibly up to 3,664 on the high end for number of housing units needed to fill our allocation for the next housing cycle, which is an 8-year cycle. So definitely a huge task ahead of us as we, not only look at land use, densities, the subsequent studies that are coming up on publicly owned lands and other studies that for housing opportunity inventories that we're working on with Rajiv's group. But then as we dive into the housing element of how do we actually get these housing numbers distributed throughout the city in an 8-year plan versus a 20-year plan that we're looking at right now. So definitely some startling numbers as we look forward, but the conversation kind of starts here with the land use plan and making sure we're providing for densities that allow us to grow in the way that the state is anticipating that we need to. So there you have it.
Mike, can I ask you a question on that? Is that
Sure.
updated annually, that kind of report, or is that done in just those, viewpoint of, 5 to 8 year time frame? Or I'm just looking ahead as, where those numbers came from and what they were derived with. Obviously, that's also pre all the issues that we're currently dealing with.
Certainly, and we can certainly schedule an item where we really dive into the methodologies behind it. The Association of Bay Area Governments is regional entity that and those directors and policymakers from around all the counties are at that table when these numbers are created. You know, it's a stark increase compared to what we have in our current housing element, which is 835 units required over 8 years. We're doing well with that, but to think that we're gonna, you know, up that to over 3,000 is staggering. So we can certainly schedule some time to, once we, and again, these are preliminary, they continue to be refined. I anticipate that by later this year, we'll have some more definitive information, and we can certainly provide that to you either in an update through a newsletter or an agenda item on a future meeting agenda.
Yeah, and the region gets its numbers actually from the state. So the state looks at the overall numbers, distributes it to the region, and then the ABAG. So for our 9-county region, the state has already told us what our number is, and that's not changing. All we are doing, all the ABAG is doing is figuring out a methodology to distribute that. And the numbers of the region itself are staggeringly high. It isn't like just the Napa is getting hit with those numbers. Virtually every city is. So it isn't like the region is suddenly saying have development in Napa. We are, the overarching numbers are just that triple of what they used to be, a double or triple,
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other comments about the GPAC numbers? Bernie, please.
I have one comment and a question for staff. You know, I just, as an observation, I wonder if we had that report at the beginning of the meeting, if the Gislett property might have gone a different direction, knowing how much numbers we have to hit. And then the second one for staff is, what happens if we don't meet those numbers, even if it gets refined to lower amount?
You want me to respond to that? There are a whole bunch of new laws about that. Chiefly is that the city always needs to retain that capacity to build. So if you are counting that for your housing needs and a development comes in at a lower density, then a city would need to rezone other sites in order to maintain the capacity that the city said, you know, you would continue to maintain. So while the city doesn't build the housing, you need to constantly monitor the inventory to make sure there is capacity to meet those needs. And for the first time, the state can actually rescind the housing element certification. They have the right to rescind it, which they never did previously. So a whole bunch of new laws are sort of out there, making sure that we continue complying with at least, you know, having the capacity to for that housing to remain to be built. Yeah.
Thank you. Do I have any comments from anyone else on the housing issue? I had down form-based zoning conversation.
You're breaking up. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had down form-based zoning as a conversation piece, but I think something that's worthy of talking about under policy issues rather than tonight. So does the committee have other issues to bring forward this evening?
You broke up again, Chair.
Goodness gracious. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Anyway, are there any other issues that either the committee or staff wants to bring forward this evening?
Mr. Chair.
Bernie, please.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that zones are looking into the publicly owned lands. Can you talk about that just a little bit and what the effort is? Because I didn't catch it earlier.
I'll have to
defer. Yeah, so part of our SB2 planning grant that we've received state funding for is to perform a housing sites inventory, looking at vacant and government-owned lands and other properties within the city limits that may be suitable for additional housing development. So that's kind of going on the heels of building on what we're doing here with the land use plan. So that's a separate study that kind of intersects with the general plan, but we're just getting that kicked off. As soon as we get this item off the plate, we'll dive into that one a little bit more with Rajiv and his crew. And again, be happy to provide you continuous updates as we go through that. It's not a very long process to do that. I think we're anticipating a couple of months to prepare that inventory. So it's something that will still be beneficial in the general plan process. But happy to bring you more information as we continue on that journey.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, do we have other issues tonight, either from staff or from the committee? So seeing none, I think it's time to adjourn.
I do want to, because we've had some public comment that was requested that get read at the meeting, I just want to run through quickly. All these have been submitted in writing and have either been provided to you right before the meeting. So you have them, they are part of the record. I just wanted to run through very quickly. I had Stacy Barrett had sent in not supportive of changes to the Timber Hill area. I had 10 folks that were not supportive of changes to the Napa Oaks area. And I'm generalizing, of course, but Ashley Llewellyn and Garrett Tanner, Heather Dunmeyer, Marilyn Campbell, Les and Sue Haig, Carol Barge, who had also spoken and sent written commentary, Ken and Sharon Rands, Martinique Corner, Kurt Ream, and Doreen and Bill Bishop. I did have one supportive of changes to the Napa Oaks designation, Bert Teef, and one that was a combination of no changes to Timber Hill or Napa Oaks, David Campbell. We had a couple comments on island annexations. I think we covered some of those. So all of these, again, while we didn't really get a chance to read them all word for word, they are included as part of the public record and will be provided as we move forward through the process.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on for the good of the order? Seeing none, it was all nice to see everybody. Congratulations to Mr. Zand on his new child. Congratulations, Tony. It's nice to see that one in your arms just a few minutes ago. So with that, I'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you,
everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.